All right, thank you, Adam. All right, good evening, everyone. I am going to call to order the Goffstown School District Public Hearing. It is October 5th. I need to read the Governor Sununu's executive order first. Consistent with Governor Sununu's Executive Order 2020-04, Emergency Order Number 12, board members will be joined via a Zoom conference call for the October 5th, 2020 School District Public Hearing relative to NVMS Partnership-Dell Computer Donations. And this will also be for the Goffstown School Board meeting that will follow. The meeting can be viewed on GTV 16 on demand and will also be streamed live on the GTV YouTube channel. The public is invited to call 03-766-5646, enter participant code 685562. If you wish to make a public comment at the beginning of the meeting, please wait for the instructions and then press number 9. Your microphone will be unmuted and you will be directed to state your name and address prior to making your public comment. You could also have emailed your public comment to Denise Morin at sau19.org prior to 4 o'clock this afternoon. In the subject line, you would indicate public comment for today's date and write your comment there. I need to take attendance. When I call your name, say if you're here and if you're alone in your room. Ellen Vamakowitz.
Present and alone.
Thank you. Janelle O'Brien.
I am alone at the moment and I am here by myself.
Thank you. Jared Talbot.
Present and alone.
Ginny McKinnon.
I am present and alone in my room.
Thank you. Retta Chaffee.
Present and alone.
Thank you. I'm Heather Trapez and I'm present and I am alone. We also have
Dan is here as well.
Hi, Dan. Okay, Dan Cloutier.
And I'm alone.
Perfect. Thank you. We have some administrators. We have Brian Bulkey, the Superintendent of Schools.
Good evening. I'm here and I'm here with Mrs. Morin and Mr. Gross in the office.
Perfect. I saw Mary Claire Berry, our Superintendent Assistant. Are you still here?
I am still here. Thanks, Heather.
There you are.
I am at home and I am alone.
Perfect. Thank you. We have Steve Bourget, our IT Director.
I'm present and alone here at the high school.
Perfect. Thank you. We have Dawn Tabor, who is standing in for Randy Lauren, which is our Facilities Director.
Hello. Yes, I'm here. I'm alone.
Thank you, Dawn. Let's see who else. We have Scott Gross, Business Administrator.
Here and in the office by myself in my office. So.
Perfect. And Denise Morin, our Executive Assistant. All right. So I think, and Justin Huff, our Athletics Director.
Hi, here and alone.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. So we are going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Scott, do you have a flag?
Yes, I do.
Perfect, thank you. I pledge allegiance,
to the flag
of the United
States of America
and to the republic for
which it stands, one nation, under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everybody. So we're going to start with the public hearing for NVMS Partnership Dell Computer Donations. Scott or Brian, do you want to talk on that?
Yeah, I'll get it started and then I'll hand it off to Mr. Gross if I may.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, what I'd like to start with is because this is a public hearing, I'd like to just point out that this meeting was appropriately posted. We have a copy of the posting that was done in the Union Leader with sufficient notice. So all of the required posting elements for holding this public hearing have been satisfied. This is a really wonderful reason that we have to have a public hearing tonight. And I want to have Mr. Gross speak to this a little bit. We're calling this an MVMS partnership donation. But Scott, can you give a little more detail and specificity, and please recognize the tremendous work of the wonderful volunteer that you're going to speak to?
Sure. Thank you, Brian. As you are well aware, we had a public hearing a couple of meetings ago from a gentleman named Otis Hendershot, who did a GoFundMe page to procure Chromebooks. And all those Chromebooks have been delivered to the SAU, and Steve is in the midst of getting all those set up and provisioned out. So we want to thank him for that. As someone in the IT community, Mr. Hendershot also reached out to Dell Computers, who is a vendor of his, and asked them if they would match the donation of Chromebooks. Well, Dell turned around and did one better. They are donating 50 laptop computers valued at probably $30,000 to $35,000. And because they needed a 501c3 organization to accept it, Mountain View Partnership accepted that donation on the district's behalf. That's why Mountain View is part of it. So I do want to thank President of MVP Kirsty Hazelbaker for helping us out in that respect. And obviously a big thank you to Dell Computers for their very generous donation. And what that will allow us to do is it will allow us to essentially replace 2 computer carts worth of laptops at Mountain View Middle School. So this is a really, really big donation for our community. So that was it. And we should be getting them, Steve. I think it's November-ish is when there's a kind of a backlog on on Chromebooks and laptops, very much in demand. So I think we're going to get them around November. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Brian, did you have anything else you wanted to?
No, just that this is a wonderful example of one person's vision of how to help their community and make it better. And I'd like to really just recognize and thank Otis for his vision on this, and obviously his employer, Dell Computers, just all of the above. So this is a great example of local advocacy and people really doing the right thing for the community.
If I could, I'd also, there's another gentleman that was involved. His name was Jeremy Susi, and he works he's a Goffstown resident, kids in the system. He also helped out. He works for a company that we do business with, and he had somehow gotten involved with Otis as well. So both of them were very helpful in getting this donation.
Great. Thank you, Scott. So we need to have a motion to accept this.
I'll make a motion to accept the donation of the Dell Computers from the MVMS partnership.
Thank you, Jared. Do I have a second?
Dan will second that.
Thank you, Dan. Does anybody have anything else to comment to before I call for a vote? Okay. Dan?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Ginny? Ginny, I think you're still muted. There you go. Are you on? Nod your head, Ginny. Yes, she's saying yes. Retta
Yes.
and Heather, yes. So that passes. Thank you so much for doing that. Scott, is there public comment for this?
There isn't any public comment.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to close public comment. If there's nothing else, then I am going to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, Dan makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
By Jared. Roll call. Dan?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Ginny? Yes, she's still having issues. She says yes, Denise. Retta?
Yes.
And Heather, yes. All right, so we are done with the public hearing. I am now going to call to order the Goffstown School Board meeting at 6:09. If everybody could stand and say the pledge again. Scott, you got the flag?
I don't, because I thought we were done with the flag. So
I'm sorry. All right.
Right.
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to
to the flag
of
of the United States of America
and
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all. Sorry, Scott, we'll have to do it again for the next one too.
Yep, okay.
All right, so moving on, we have a lot to do tonight. I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve the September 14th, 2020 board minute meetings.
So moved.
Was that Retta?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second, this is Janelle.
Janelle, thank you, Janelle. Did anybody see anything? Okay, seeing nothing, I will take a roll call. Dan,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Ginny? Ginny, are you still having issues? Ginny, can you nod your head or something? Okay, Ginny's saying yes. Retta
Yes.
and Heather, yes. So the meetings are approved. Correspondence, Brian?
Scott, I think we had just a couple of things. The first of which, as Mr. Gross is pulling that up, I will speak to it. The select board in Goffstown took the action of moving the polling place for the Pinardville side of town, District 5, from Bartlett Elementary School to Mountain View. Probably not difficult to imagine that the larger space would be more desirable for the safe implementation of the November 3rd election. So we have said all along that we're happy to assist the town in any way that we can. We've worked closely with the town. Mr. Gross has, Mr. Loring has, along with Ms. Tabor, Principal Kohler. So this is more of an FYI. It will have a little bit of an impact on the school operations, but we will work around it and make things work for the town. And Scott, I believe we had, oh, this is the second piece. We received a very nice letter thanking us for allowing the Goffstown Fire Department to have Captain Towers service at the high school and the football field. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank, in addition to Mr. Loring and Ms. Tabor, Principal McBride, as well as Assistant Athletic Director Huff. Justin just really took a lot on and worked with them. And again, there's just no substitute for having someone like Justin Huff on your team. So Justin worked with them and made sure that the fire department had everything they need and everything was in place and taken care of. So those are the two pieces of correspondence for this meeting.
Great, thank you, Brian. Any commendations, good news? Oh, Ellen, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you. I had totally forgot to do this at our last meeting. I'd like to give a commendation to Maple Labs PFT for the work they did in the back by the playground, the area called what they call their Field of Dreams, which was filled in and sodded. And they have temporary, I think it's pretty sure it's temporary irrigation, so the sod takes root back there and it looks very nice. So thank you to the PFT.
Awesome, thank you, Ellen. Is anybody else? All right, I am seeing no one else. If I miss you, just yell out my name. All right, so we're going to move on to public comment. Scott, do we have anything?
Let me just check again.
Okay.
No one's on the line.
All right, perfect. Moving on to committee reports. Scott, finance reports.
Sure, I'm going to share my screen with you. You should have received this last week, which is the manifest summary report. And hopefully everyone can see it. The manifest for this evening is in the amount of $1,179,371.65. The lion's share, which is typical, is payroll and taxes and benefits at a little over $805,000. Your special ed activity totals a little over $87,000. Noteworthy there are Spalding, there are multiple students in the month of August for $33,000, and regional services, there's one student for the first semester. And we also have some contracted speech. On your general expenses, we have Goffstown Truck Center, which is STA, almost $120,000. More in contracting, you'll recall that we had the stairs replaced and that project is completed. If you haven't seen it, it came out really well. I want to thank Dawn and Randy on that one for coordinating that. Dead River, typically this would be for propane or oil, but it's actually a little bit of both. But we also had some repairs. We had a very slight propane leak to one of our tanks, and they had to do some repair work on that, and they did that already. That was done during the summer. Amazon, as you can imagine, the beginning of the school year, just a ton of supplies at all of our schools. NHIAA is our coaches' dues, and we also have school specialty, which again, school supplies at mostly our elementary schools. SGS Turf Care, this is your field maintenance at Mountain View as well as the high school. And then lastly is Eversource, which is your electricity. We did not have any food service expenses that were over 5,000. So with that, I'll entertain any questions that anyone may have.
Okay,
I'd
thanks.
like to offer a motion.
Go ahead, Dan.
I'd like the motion, we accept the manifest for dated October 5, 2020, in the amount of $1,179,371.65.
Thank you, Dan. Is there a second?
Second.
By Ellen?
Mhm.
All right. I will take a roll call. Dan,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Retta,
Yes.
and Heather, yes. So that passes. Okay, Scott, manifest and vouchers.
Those are all taken care of. The next one would be copier lease. Our
Okay.
copier lease agreement with Xerox would expire in November. The SAU, if you recall, extended it with Xerox as well as the New Boston School District. So I'm proposing to do the same. It would be a 4-year extension with Xerox. What that would do is a couple of things. One, the copier lease itself would be less cost than what we're paying right now on a monthly basis by about a couple $100 a month. Right now, we pay a little over $4,200. The new lease would be around $4,000, a little bit more than that. What it also does, it will put all of our copying machines all on the same age cycle and would allow us essentially to go out to bid 4 years from now with New Boston, SAU, and Goffstown, so that if we did go out to bid, we would be able to replace all copiers in all of our buildings. So the thought process here was two things, not to mention the fact that we have about half of our, a little more than half of our existing copiers would be replaced. I think about 60% of these would be replaced under this lease agreement. And then once it's done, again, we would have, in 4 years, we would just simply put it out to bid. The complicating factors, if we did it now, in talking with Steve, we could have, how do I say, 2 or 3 different manufacturers of copiers, which would be a little bit problematic for us in terms of servicing and toner and all that other fun stuff.
Okay, thank you, Scott. So you need a motion to extend this?
Yeah, essentially to extend it, to authorize a 4-year lease with Xerox and budget. And then at the end of that, we would put it out to bid 4 years from now.
So moved.
All right, so Ellen is going to make that motion. Is there a second?
Janelle, I'll second. I also have a question.
Okay, yes, Janelle. I'll second. Yeah, I was going to ask about questions. So Janelle is seconding, and Janelle, go ahead with your question.
I was just curious about for the payment cycle. Is it kind of staggered right now, and is that like an easier budgetary plan, or is this going to be easier to have one big lump sum at every 4 year increment?
We pay monthly. So right now we pay a little over $4,200 a month for our copier lease in Goffstown. And essentially it would be a little bit less, a couple $100 a month. But what it does is it puts all of our copiers in all 3 entities, SAU, New Boston, and Goffstown, on the same replacement cycle. So that when we do go out to bid, if we decide that we don't want Xerox anymore and we want Toshiba or Canon, essentially that vendor who might be putting in a bid would replace every single copier in all 3 essential districts. So it puts us all in the same procurement cycle. Because right now, if we didn't, we would potentially be looking at two things. Either one, we would have different manufacturers, or two, we would have you would have bids that would come in that would, if they had to replace all the copiers, it would be really expensive. You wouldn't get a great price. Because I said 60% of them are getting replaced. The other 40, they'd have to bid on, and you wouldn't get the people that have the current contract would be in a better position. Steve, is that sound? I'm not off the reservation on here at this one, right?
No, you're accurate there.
All right.
40% of our fleet was replaced 2 years ago. And those are the ones that have another 4 years worth of life on it that we're trying to just continue using, as opposed to send those out to bid as well. So we would just be replacing the ones that are hit the end of their 6-year life expectancy.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Janelle, does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I see Tim has joined us. Did he answer your question, Tim?
Oh, I just wanted to say that I joined for you, Heather, in case you didn't know.
I didn't. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion. We have a second. Are there any other comments or questions before I take a roll call? Okay, seeing none. Dan,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Retta,
Yes.
and Heather, yes. So that passes. All right, Scott, is that everything for you?
That's all I have tonight.
Okay, perfect. So moving on, Policy Review Committee is meeting next Monday, 10/12 at 6 o'clock at the SAU upstairs conference room.
Heather, it's MC.
Yes.
I have a question, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Typically, didn't we start those meetings at 5:30, Heather?
Yes, we did, 5:30.
One of the reasons that we did is because the meetings ran from 5:30 to 7, and they back right up against C&E, which typically starts at 7. So I'm not sure for this particular meeting, if you want to start at 6, I can certainly accommodate that, or we can start at 5:30 because there is not a C&E meeting that evening.
Well, Susanna is not on yet. Tim, does 5:30 work for you?
I would definitely be late because I'd be coming up from Nashua.
Okay.
But, well, actually, next week I'm working from home. So, yeah, that would work.
All right. So
can't
why don't we
reply
keep it at 5:30 then, MC?
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for clarifying that. I also wanted to give everybody an FYI. At our last board meeting, we were asked what senior year meant, and we talked to the high school, and we have a definition, and our plan is to put that on the policy at next week's meeting and bring to you on October 19th for a first read. So this was just an FYI, and you will see it coming out on October 19th. And then our SAU board meeting is meeting October 20th at 6, and that will be a Zoom meeting as well. So thank you all for getting back to Denise on that. The next is superintendent report.
Well, I have a number of things this evening, and some of which I think will be part of a larger conversation at a subsequent school board meeting. But let me go through my list, if I may. Had the opportunity to participate last week in the public library's continuing focus around race and their crucial conversation series. The last session was focused around how to be an advocate and promote racial justice. So I was pleased to be a part of that. I wanted to let you know that we put in for, I think I'd let the board know that we were looking to do 2 smaller scale Halloween parades for Maple Ave and for Bartlett. We submitted the necessary paperwork to the select board, and they approved those parades. So we'll be doing scaled back, the typical traditional parade where we shut down Main Street and the band comes and plays. That's not going to be happening, but 2 very small scale parades will happen for Maple Ave on the Wednesday and Thursday before Halloween. And then on the same days, we will have 2 smaller scale parades at Bartlett. So I'd like to think, that's a very good question. I would have to pull up the paperwork. I think it might be around 1. And we're going to be putting out some information with expectations for parents. So we have complete confidence that the students will socially distance, that they'll wear masks, that they'll wash and sanitize their hands. They'll do all the right things that we expect them to do. And we hope that parents will do the same. So my concern is that parents can't be stacked up, they can't be grouped and clustered, and hopefully parents will be amenable to the fact that we worked hard to make sure we could have this traditional parade. We want kids to be able to have fun, but we need to do it safely for our community. So we'll put some guidance out for parents around expectation. There are, I think I had shared with you that there is a regional forum on school funding that took place on October 1st in Hillsborough County. I didn't see what the turnout was for that, but I'll be curious to see if they have any follow-up or there's any information about that. We have been looking at and evaluating the possibility of teacher stipends for being on the school board as school board reps. As you're aware, our policy allows us to have 3 teachers on the school board, and to date we have 0. We have reached out a number of times to the teachers and have not had any takers on that. And to that end, we've explored the possibility of offering a stipend to board members. We will be, I think Mrs. McGrath is probably not quite finished, but has been evaluating using the formula to evaluate what a potential stipend for that could be for the board to consider. And Mr. Gross, we analyzed the school board stipend line, and I had recommended increasing it for next year's budget. But Mr. Gross saw that we had actually a little more money in that particular account than we were using. So we did not make an adjustment, and that will give the school board a funding stream to be able to evaluate the possibility of paying a teacher stipend to sit on the school board. I wanted to let you know I approved 2 early graduations, one for Jenna Tashida and one for Caleb Kilbreath. So they will be graduating early. Even despite COVID, they did get their paperwork in on time. So we processed those over the summer and just sent the letters out last week, letting them know that those had been approved. This will be an example of something that we will need to follow up with the board, but we at least wanted to put this on your radar. You're aware that we have, last year we hired an HVAC technician, and to date, actually when we start to go through school budgets, the board will see significant reductions in our contracted services line for HVAC services in all schools, all locations. And one of the things that we found as Randy has gotten this position up and running is that our HVAC tech, who has been doing an incredible job, is very limited in his ability to perform his role without having a work vehicle. So not this evening, but at a future meeting, we will be coming forth with a recommendation to have a budget transfer to purchase a used van for our HVAC technician. We've looked at that and we think the price is probably going to be around $20,000. But just as an example, I think just this year, Scott has estimated more than $40,000 in savings by moving away from a contracted service model. So no particular action requested this evening, but we did want to give the board a heads up that we will be likely making a recommendation in the very near future with respect to that ban. You'll see that the enrollment reports have been slightly changed. Mrs. Moran has worked really carefully with our schools to revamp the enrollment form and to be able to capture a little more information for board members. That includes the number of hybrid sections and some of those kinds of things, the number of remote only sections by grade levels. So if you take a look at your enrollment report, they do in fact look different. In terms of meeting structure, Scott and I have spoken. We've spoken with Mr. Bourget as well as Mr. McCune. I think the school board is looking to get back into the library media center at the high school, and we would be moving away from any kind of a Zoom type format. Over the last couple of months, as we've had our meetings, it's tricky with everyone being on computers. So what we're looking to do and really making sure that Adam will have the appropriate feed that he needs for the broadcast is we were looking to get back to the high school, have everyone appropriately distanced, and to have the ability to have microphones. And it would still allow us, for any board members who weren't physically able to be present, that we could have them on either the conference call line or the bridge line, whichever avenue Mr. Gross thinks will be the easiest for him to manage. So we have continued to work with Adam on that. We did look at some options around maybe meeting in a different location, being able to have more space. But for example, the meeting with the budget committee tonight is just a good example that there are just too many people to be able to pull off the meeting and have the kind of quality broadcast that GTV always provides for us. In terms of updates on remote-only students and students returning back into the hybrid model, we, as you're aware, we put out a selection form, and some parents, I think, and I understand why, were upset that we were asking them to make a choice, but we really need to be able to plan and to have a sense of when families intend to send kids back, so that we're able to look at our priority return students. So the principals, we met twice last week going over all the numbers, and each of the schools is coming up with a plan. So I would expect at our next board meeting to have an update with respect to that. Mrs. Berry, I'd like to recognize and thank her. I have asked her to take on the concept of contact tracing, and she has put together a team. We met last Friday. I know that we're meeting again this week coming up, and we're using the Johns Hopkins. There's a contact 6-hour tracing course that's available for free online, and it's very well done. So Mrs. Berry and a number of the nurses have either done that or they're in the process of doing that. But we're also looking for help and support from people who have experience with Power School. Essentially, what we want to have the ability and the knowledge is to, if we have potential cases or exposure of COVID, that we want to expedite as much as we possibly can for DHHS. So instead of them saying, can you please provide this information and that information, we want to have it all ready for them. It's already done, and that we would have an enhanced role in that. And really, I do believe that this is a function and a responsibility of Health and Human Services, but I would never want any exposure to go unprocessed as quickly as it possibly could, so that we can go through the contact tracing and really make sure that people are isolated, make sure that we know about exposures. So we would do everything that we could to help support DHHS, and I'd like to thank MC for her efforts with that. The board is aware that FEMA reversed course on reimbursement for school districts for COVID-related expenses, such as personal protective equipment. This still upsets many of us, and it looks like there's some considerations occurring at the state level. Governor Sununu has indicated that there may be some state money. Of course, each state received a large amount of money as part of the stimulus from Congress, and so we're hoping that some of that money will be available to offset some of the increased costs that we've had. Ellen mentioned the Field of Dreams. I too was going to speak to that, and I wanted to recognize in particular the Veery family. In addition to equipment and labor, expertise, they provided a lot of oversight to make this project happen. So the donations of the Veery family, as well as the parent-teacher group, is very much appreciated. This year, in terms of our response to COVID, we have not asked the board for any additional positions, but I did want to let you know that we are likely going to be doing so. Mrs. Kohler has been going through all of her numbers and her sections and her sizes of her groups and her classes, as well as the caseload of all of the teachers. And we continue to come up short in mathematics at Mountain View Middle School. So Mrs. Kohler has a proposal that she's working on. I've not had the chance to review it with her yet, but I would anticipate at a upcoming school board meeting that I would be bringing a recommendation for a one-year math position at Mountain View. So more to come on that. Again, that's another example of one of these that's going to need more time and it's going to need some thoughtful discussion. But I did want to let board members know that that was in the works. Mr. Gross, can you allow me to share my screen, please? And I'll go over my last piece, moving between the variables. Thank you. Nope, not your screen, my screen. Thank you. So this document will look familiar to you. I updated this on 9/23 for the last New Boston School Board meeting. I did not put the time into updating this, but this just gives you a continued look at the variables that we're evaluating to move between phases. So when we continue to look at community transmission, New Hampshire has ticked up in the last week or so. Our cases look to be higher, although the positivity rating of testing is still below 1%, which is a really good number. We're looking at that getting over 5% as being incredibly problematic. Another contributing factor to that is the testing that's being done at the university system. In particular, University of New Hampshire is testing all students twice a week. So you can see that that level and intensity of testing brings down the positivity rating, which is not a bad thing. In the paper that you probably saw on the 22nd, there was a report that there were 11 positive cases at St. Anselm College. St. A's is counted in the state dashboard as being in Manchester. So those numbers, any numbers associated with St. Anselm College will not show up in our numbers, but just those 11 cases, if I were to extrapolate it out based on the population of Goffstown, as you've seen me do a couple of different times, I've shared this look, that would equate to a case count of 61 per 100,000. That was, again, that's in the past, so I think those are not active cases anymore. But to date, I think our numbers are increasing. I do want the board to know that the state just started including antigen testing in the numbers. So I think we will continue to see a little bit of a spike in the numbers based on how they're collecting that data. But at this point, I think we're in pretty good shape. We continue to evaluate any positive cases. We continue to look at staffing and absenteeism of our faculty as well as our students. And I can't emphasize the workforce staffing capacity enough. I hope that I sound like a broken record because this remains one of the most significant factors for us to move to a less restrictive phase. And I didn't speak with Dr. Tim Powers, who is a colleague of mine. He's the headmaster of Pinkerton Academy. But I understand today that Pinkerton has had to do some shifting to remote learning because they've had a workforce shortage. So this is a very real consideration for us, but one that we continue to pay attention to. Successful implementation of a more restrictive phase. I'm feeling very good that our phase 2 operations in all schools have gone incredibly well. I think our staff has done a terrific job, and I think our kids are being incredibly compliant. So I'm very pleased overall thus far with what I've seen. Input from administration as well as our 4 unions is important to me. So any move of phases, I would want them to have a voice with me. And apart from these other things, testing capacity, healthcare capacity, PPE, I think all of those at this point we're in a really good place. So at this point, our next move is at our next meeting, we'll talk about the numbers of students returning from remote only. We have a number of kids that'll be starting back the 3rd week of October. And I'll review all those numbers with you, as well as give an update on our priority return students. And the last piece is I wanted to give an update on the Glen Lake project. Mr. Gross, I'm not sure how much we want to share or probably should share, but we have a little bit of a delay that we've had some issues with the flooring contractor. And Mr. Loring and Ms. Tabor are not happy and satisfied with the flooring, and we are working that through with our contractor. So at this point, VCT tile has been set. We are unfortunately not satisfied with that and are taking appropriate next steps with our vendor. Unfortunately, our ability to move to phase 2 for Glen Lake School is predicated on the use of that space. So we're hoping to get this done as fast as we possibly can so that we can hand that space over to to Mrs. Stoyle and to our teachers, but we're not quite there yet. And we also had a little bit of a slowdown that we had some electrical issues that had to be resolved and required electricians to make several changes to how some of the things were done. So we're continuing to make good progress. Randy and Don have done an incredible job overseeing this project. And with the exception of the flooring and a few other relatively small things, we're pretty satisfied with what we have. So hopefully we'll have that building ready to hand over to Mrs. Stoyle, hopefully in the next month or so. So that's all I have for updates. I apologize that that was a little long, but I'll stop there and see if there might be any questions for me.
Thank you, Scott. I saw Ellen's hand. Go ahead, Ellen.
Yes, Brian, when will the elementary schools be going to remote learning on Friday?
Well, they're already on remote learning on Friday. I think what you mean is when will they be back in session on Friday? So Ellen, that's one of the things that we met on last week with the elementary principals. Our intent for our next kind of movement of kids coming back and more time in school will include elementary schools in Friday. We're not quite ready to do that yet. We're still evaluating the numbers, but you can expect to hear from me about that in 2 weeks.
So you're telling us that, in fact, as of now, Fridays for all elementary kids are being conducted on Zoom?
Zoom as one piece of it, but yes, they are being done remotely.
On Friday, okay.
On Fridays. And what we're looking at is moving towards students being back in and Friday being a regular day of rotation for elementary students. At this point, the Friday model is working, and we don't feel we have the capacity to make a change at Mountain View. And at the high school, all teachers, all students have all 8 blocks on Fridays. Those sessions are all being done remotely. And at this point, we're going to stick with that. But we are looking to make a change in the next couple of weeks for the elementary students in Goffstown.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to move on to old business.
Oh, Heather, I did have some questions.
I'm
Unfortunately, my
sorry,
reaction
Jared.
button, my reaction
didn't
button's
see.
not working there.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Superintendent, 2 things. One about the COVID numbers that you presented. It's listed that St. A's is listed in the Manchester zip code. Is that the same with any Bernardville diagnoses that we're getting? Are those also listed in Manchester, or are those falling in the Goffstown numbers?
I believe that they're following in the Goffstown numbers. I do meet every week with the police and fire chiefs. So they have kept us, they get a daily report. They get much more detail than we get. What I was referring to, Jared, is the Department of Ed created a dashboard. And if you Google NHDOE COVID dashboard, you'll get to this. St. A's is included as a school in Manchester, as is Bartlett. So if you search by town on that dashboard and you go to Goffstown, Bartlett Elementary School is not even listed. They count it in Manchester. I probably could, call and make a stink at the state level, but that's how they've done it. They did the same thing with St. A's. So on that dashboard, their numbers are not included in the Goffstown schools.
Okay. Thank you for that. My second question is in regards to just the Glen Lake. I know that they're looking at evaluating the timeline associated with getting ready to turn it over to the administration to be used. Do we have that timeline in place, or are we still evaluating what needs to be done so that you can give us a timeline of when our students can start using that space?
So right now, the work is not completed, and we have a I would want to be cautious here, and I'd be happy to speak in non-public if there was more information that the board was requesting. We have a disagreement over the flooring, and at this point, we have not resolved this with our contractor. That's really the piece that's holding us up right now. So in terms of timeline, actually Dawn was on site today with a flooring contractor. Scott and I have both been over at the facility. We've been, looking at the floors and evaluating them. Scott, do you feel comfortable sharing any kind of a pretty much, Jared, everything except the floor and some punch list items is basically done. So the floor really does remain the last outstanding issue with our contractor. Scott, would you add anything?
Yeah, that's essentially it. And, we did get an email from from the company that they acknowledge that the floor needs to be replaced and that the issue now is getting a contractor and getting the materials. I got an email this afternoon that they think it could happen within the next couple of weeks in terms of the installation. So I would think that November 1st would probably be a good target date in terms of being ready to go. But
yeah, if I can just add to that,
just don't know.
Scott, so Scott gave a little more information than I was probably going to give, but in terms of the floor being replaced, this is a floor that is finished. It's already done. So we're looking at a couple of options. One would be for the vendor to rip up, do the demo, make repairs, level the floor, and reset all of the VCT tile. You're talking about over 6,200 square feet of it. The other option that I'm very open to would be we still owe our contractor the last installment payment. I would be more than happy to take the cost off and at this point, call the floor good, put 3 coats of finish on it, and then rip it up next summer and plan to schedule the replacement of that floor at a later point in time just to expedite it. So that's the status, Jared. It's unfortunate because I think without the floor, I think we'd be ready to cut the ribbon right now.
If I may, Ms. Chair, and I just want to verbalize it. I know that most people on this board understand it and some members of our community may not. But with our IEPs now being completed, in the expedited fashion that they were in, I do know that some of our IEPs for our students that are in the kindergarten or younger are asked to be in school twice during the week. Currently, they're only in there once during the week based on our current opening plan. And I know there's nothing that we can do about that. It's just a reminder that these things have real implications for our IEP students. And we're working, and I know, Brian, you're working as hard as you can to make sure that we can get them back in as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Jared. And, it's unfortunate that had that building been done, we wouldn't be waiting on that space because we desperately need that space right now.
Okay, so I hate to cut this short, but it's 6:48 and we are supposed to start our budget session. Budget committee members are supposed to be getting on any time now. We still have a little bit more to go through on our agenda. So I think I've been texting with Scott. I think what we're going to have to do, Justin has an update on athletics. If we could do that, and then we're probably going to have to adjourn, go into the budget session with the budget committee, do that, adjourn, and come back into the Goffstown School Board so we can finish the rest of our agenda. I apologize, but we just are running out of time. So is that all right, Brian?
Yeah, that's fine. And actually, if we go quickly with this, we might be able to squeeze in the Uncanonic update too. So the short version, and Justin has a slide up here that he can speak to. The board will recall that we asked you to approve our continued moving to the next phase of athletics. And at this point, what we are looking for is the board's authorization to continue to move to the next phase, which for us will include identifying post-season tournament play. So Justin, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you. So yes, certainly in the interest of being quick here, big picture athletics going well. Great seeing kids out there playing. We went phase 3 practices, phase 4 interscholastic events, keeping a regional model as much as possible, almost all the time. And then the next step would be, and we'd mentioned to the board that we would be bringing this forward. The state is now asking us to declare our intentions for postseason play. So starting as early as tomorrow, they have some surveys that are due. So I want to know if we would be able to move forward with planning to say, yes, we're interested in participating. At a certain point in probably the second or third round of postseason play, it could be that you start to play teams outside of your region more. So really it would be asking to try to, take that next step, keeping in mind, obviously, that nobody needs to be more nimble than athletics. And as far as adjusting to stuff that happens on a daily basis, we're always looking to do that as well.
So for the board's consideration, I might recommend, if the board is in support of allowing us to proceed, I might ask for a motion to grant the athletic director authority to proceed with postseason planning for scheduling purposes for Goffstown High School as well as Mountain View Middle School, with the understanding that the superintendent has the authority to suspend play for any or all teams if necessary.
So moved.
Right. Okay, I have a motion by Ellen. Do I have a second?
I'll go ahead and second it.
Okay, thank you,
Dan.
Dan. Before I do a roll call, did anybody have any questions for Justin?
See Ginny's hand.
Oh, there's Ginny. Thank you, Brian. Go ahead, Ginny.
I would kind of like to know what's going on ahead of time. I usually don't mind decisions being made ahead of time and then us okaying them afterwards. But I was a little concerned when we changed the athletic plan from what we had initially decided upon. And then we kind of found out about it afterwards. So I think I'd like to have kind of an idea of what the tournament play, postseason play might be. Even if it's like maybe some emails to us so that we know what's going on before things start to happen, just so that we know that things are safe. Also, have we had any issues with any COVID exposure with the change in schedule from the schedule that we originally okayed?
Justin?
We have not. And my slide stated, so I think 91% of the games are within the cluster. There were some holes in schedules, so we did look to fill those with other regional schools. So far to this point, no exposures.
Okay. And I realize those things are going to happen. I just kind of would like to know ahead before parents are in that situation, and so that we can reply to it.
Understood.
I also
Thank you,
think,
Ginny.
Ginny, we're going to also need to start talking about winter athletics. So again, don't have to do it tonight, but basketball, wrestling, cheer, swim, indoor track, skiing, ice hockey. There's a lot of them that is going to really take a lot of thought. Justin continues to do a great job, very connected at the state level. So Ginny, I do apologize, and we did send that information. We wanted to get that to board members because I recognize that some of the scheduling was different from what we originally hoped for, and I apologize for that. But the next step at this point is just us indicating whether we're willing to be part of a postseason tournament, and if we would allow, if we would host games, and if we would allow spectators. I think those are examples of some of the questions that Justin is seeking authorization to respond to. And Justin, did you say that these postseason play, tournament play, would be about 3 weeks away? Is that accurate?
The first one would be field hockey would start on October 20th. Football would start the following weekend. The objective is the first round or two, depending on the sport, would remain regional. If you progress from there, there is a point at which you will play teams outside of your region potentially.
Have we had any issues with attendance as far as people who are going to the games, going by the rules?
I would say by and large, it's been very good, very cooperative.
Okay.
people want to watch their kids play, but they understand that kind of this is what we need to do. We're also part of a state organization that can make decisions where we're kind of obligated to follow those decisions. And in this case, it's been at times not allowing as many people in as I might like to, because I want parents to be able to watch their kids, but we're doing what we can.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Ginny. Jared, did you want
I just want to make sure that I understand that this motion and seconded is for the vote to participate if we make the playoffs, not the vote to plan for playoffs.
No, it's just planning.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Jared, there you go.
And can you repeat that for me so it's clear in my mind?
So what we're looking for is the ability to proceed with post-season planning.
But not actual playing, because I
Correct.
have a lot of questions that have to do with playing.
Correct.
Okay.
Planning only.
Okay. So we
So
can
the-
have an intent to plan, but then have another motion to actually not do it. Does that make sense?
Justin?
The
Justin, you
time frame,
wanna-
I'm not sure. My sense is that this state organizations are looking for decisions as early as tomorrow, saying, are you going to be participating in a postseason tournament? A yes can always become a no if something comes up, but my sense is if we say we're not in, then we're not in. But it would be an intention to say, yes, we're in the playoffs. We would like to participate in your open tournament. That schedule comes out. It's a couple weeks from now, those games would start. And if things are on the track they're on now, my hope would be to be able to participate.
And then Heather, perhaps this conversation is going to go a little longer than we have time between now and the next meeting. So I have several questions because I know COVID's on the rise right now. And I was a yes vote before, and I'm more on the fence until those answers
Okay.
are obtained.
All right. So why don't we table this motion? And we're going to have to get into our next meeting and we can come back to it later tonight when we come back to the Goffstown meeting. So I'll need a motion to table this.
I'll make that motion that we table this for the moment.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
All right. I have Dan make the motion, Jared second. I'll do a roll call. Dan,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes,
Tim,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Retta,
Yes.
and Heather. Yes. So that motion passes. I'm sorry, Justin, that we had to cut you off. Has anybody come on? Scott?
I haven't, I can let everybody in now. I just didn't want to do that while you're in the middle of a conversation.
Oh, thank you.
I believe we need to adjourn.
We
Is that
cannot
correct, Lou?
adjourn.
You can't
We
adjourn.
cannot adjourn
No, you can't
because
adjourn.
because
Not
then we
adjourn,
can't come
not
back.
adjourn, and it's not
It-
tabling. What do we
No,
call that?
I
We take a
don't-
break.
I don't remember that name.
I don't
Yeah,
think
there's
you
a
need-
word.
You don't
Okay.
really need to do anything because next on your agenda is a budget presentation and it's just part of
Cool.
your agenda. So
Let's
you're
just make it
supposed to be
happen.
moving-
Agenda.
Right.
Love
Okay.
it.
All right, guys. We have a lot of people coming on and we have a lot to do tonight. So we are going to, Scott, if you can start letting them in. So, because I have to go through the whole governance again and I have to take attendance.
All
This
right, so I-
presentation is not on our agenda.
It is, it's on the third page, fourth page.
Yeah, but it's its own agenda.
Yes, because we were supposed to finish the Goffstown School Board meeting, adjourn, and then go into,
So technically,
We can jump to the other item if we want to.
well, it
Number
was put as a,
6.
it was put as a third type of.
Meeting.
meeting.
But what
yeah,
I'm saying to take care of Ellen's concern, if we wanted to run it without, because I can't remember the name on how to postpone the meeting.
All right, well, we're
recess,
getting
really wrong.
Yeah.
recess.
everybody on.
Recess, I like that. The chair can recess the meeting till a few hours later. That's a good shot. I don't know, whatever you want to do.
I move to recess the board meeting
It's not,
until
it's not a
later this
motion.
evening.
It's not a motion. I think it's a chairman activity.
We're just gonna recess the Goffstown School Board meeting until
Thank
after the
you.
budget presentations.
Thank you.
All right, so Scott, is everybody on?
Yes, I've let everybody in,
Okay.
and I'm just gonna have to try to type in people's names that if I don't have them, so.
All right, well, I'm gonna start moving along here if everybody is on.
Yeah,
So good
everyone is
evening,
on now.
everybody. Welcome to the Goffstown School Board and Budget Committee work session. Before we get into the full meeting, I do need to read the governance executive order, so just bear with me. Consistent with Governor Sununu's Executive Order 2020-04, Emergency Order Number 12, board members will be joined via a Zoom conference call for the October 5th, 2020 Goffstown School Board Budget Work Session. The meeting can be viewed on GTV 16 on demand and will also be streamed live on the GTV YouTube channel. The public is invited to call 603-766-5646, enter participant code 685562. If you wish to make a public comment at the beginning of the meeting, please wait for the instructions and then press 9. Your microphone will be unmuted and you will be directed to state your name and address prior to making your public comment. You could also have emailed public comment to Denise Moran at sau19.org prior to 4 o'clock this afternoon. In the subject line, you would indicate public comment for today's date and state your public comment. I do need to take attendance for everybody that is here. When I call your name, if you can just say you are here and if you are in your room alone. And I apologize if I miss anyone. Yell at me if I have. So I'm going to start with board members. Susanna Buzel.
Here and alone.
Retta Chaffee.
Here and alone.
Dan Cloutier.
Here and alone.
Ginny McKinnon.
Here and alone.
Janelle O'Brien.
Here and with my dog.
Tim Stetson.
Here and alone.
Jared Talbot.
Present and alone.
Ellen Vermakowitz.
Present and alone.
And I'm Heather Trapez, and I'm here and alone. We have our SAU administrators, Brian Balke, our superintendent.
I'm present, and I'm with Mr. Gross and Mrs. Moran at the SAU office.
Perfect. Mary Claire Berry, our assistant superintendent.
I am here and I am alone.
Okay. Is Dr. Jennifer Doloff here? She is our special ed director. I don't see her. Okay. Kate McGrath, our HR director.
Here and alone.
Stephen Bourget, our IT director.
Here and alone.
Megan Bizzaro, our food service director. Is she here tonight?
Here and alone.
You are, thank you. And Dawn Tabor is standing in for Randy Lauren, our facilities director.
Here and alone.
Okay, thank you. We have budget committee members with us tonight. Cole Reel is the chairman of the budget committee. Are you here?
Yep. Here and by myself. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Cole. Jeffrey O'Brien is the vice chairman.
Here and alone.
Thank you. Bill Cordes. No, Bill? Okay.
Bill is here, but he's on mute, so. but he-
Okay. All right. No, that's good. No, as long as I know he's here. Richard Manzo. I don't see him. Okay. Fred Plett. Nope. Sorry, I can't see everybody's name, so that's why I'm just going through my list. Dennis Lynch.
He's not on. So.
Okay. Joseph Alexander.
Hey, Heather, I'm here and I'm alone.
Who is that?
Joe Alexander, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Spencer Diaz.
Present and alone.
Skylar Sund.
Here and alone.
Thank you. Eileen McNinney.
Here and alone.
Thank you. Greg Flagel.
Here and alone.
Perfect. Is Danielle Bezora here?
No, she's not.
Okay. And Peter Georgantis sitting in for Mark LeMay as the selectman rep.
Here and alone.
Great, thank you. And Richard Fletcher, Goffstown Village precinct rep. No, okay. Principals, Kathy Stoyle, Glen Lake principal.
Here and alone.
Thank you. Jerry St. Gelais is Bartlett principal.
Jerry's not with us this evening, but Brandy Williams is here in her place, our assistant principal.
Okay, thank you.
Brandy, are you
you
by
here?
yourself?
I'm here and I'm alone.
Perfect. Suzanne Pishka, Maple Avenue Principal.
I'm here and alone.
Thank you. Wendy Kohler, Mountain View Middle School Principal.
Here and alone.
All right, and I see Mrs. Johnston is here as well, and she's the assistant principal at Maple Avenue.
Here and alone.
Great. Frank McBride, high school principal.
Frank is not with us this evening.
Okay. Kim McCann, assistant principal at the high school. I see her.
Yes, I'm here and I'm alone.
All right. Did I miss anyone? No. Okay. All right. So thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. We will start the budget presentations here in a few minutes. Before we get started, there is a lot of you, and I have a small screen. So if you want to ask a question, type it or raise your hand or yell out my name. I'm doing the best I can to try to get everybody in. I will take questions after each school presents. And before we start the next school, I will make sure that I've covered everyone's questions because there is a lot of us here tonight. So we are going to open to public comment. Scott, do you have public comment?
We don't have anyone who's on the line.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to close public comment and we can start. So I'm not sure, is Glen Lake starting first, Brian?
No, first off, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead,
Brian.
Scott.
Yeah, well, first off, just a couple of things. I want to thank all the budget committee members, especially for their flexibility in doing a combined meeting. As we stated, I know I talked to Cole about it. Administrators have really worked hard over the last 6 to 7 months with COVID, and this is saving a few nights out for everyone. So I can't thank you enough for being flexible and proceeding. Tonight's presentations, we're going to have the superintendent we'll go over just a very large overview of the budget, and we'll then go into the district lines, which represent about 25% of the budget. And then after that, we'll have a presentation from the Glen Lake School, and after that, food service, time permitting. So, with that, I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Balke, and I'm going to share my screen, Brian, and I'll advance the slides for you. And as the chair stated, if you can just hold your questions towards the end. The intent of this is an overview, and I wanted to let everybody know that whether it be at the school board meetings after this, in terms of the workshops, that's when you're going to get into the nitty gritty in terms of each budget line and go into very deep detail on things. Same thing with the budget committee. When you do meet, you typically go page by page, and that's the opportunity when you typically ask those, more the questions that have more detail to them. So with that, I'm going to share my screen, and we'll start off with the superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. And I also would like to thank the budget committee for your flexibility. And I'd like to introduce myself. I think we only have a couple new members, and there are a couple of you that I haven't had the chance to meet. So I apologize that this is our first introduction, and I hope to be present with you again soon. So what we're going to do today is we're going to give just a general, as Mr. Gross said, a general overview of the budget. Next slide. So our calendar, so just to review, our 2 work sessions between the school board and the budget committee will be this week. Both of those will be on Zoom. And then the school board will get into their deliberations on October 19th and 21st, with the hope of the school board being finished their budget on November 2nd, which would allow us to deliver the budget to the budget committee on the next day on November 3rd. Tonight's presentations, if time permits, we can get a little past this, but we're planning on my introduction of the budget overview. I'm going to talk about one of my all-time favorite topics of conversation, school funding. We're going to get into revenue. We're going to look at the district lines, food service, and Glen Lake. And it's unlikely, but if we were finished, we could potentially move on to Maple Ave. Next slide. Thank you. So I really could go on for quite some time talking about school funding, but because we have some new budget committee members, and because I think it's among the most pressing issues facing the state of New Hampshire, I did want to give just a little bit of an overview on educational funding. And it's particularly timely in that I think it was 2 weeks ago now that the state Supreme Court heard the latest educational funding lawsuit, which was brought forth by a consortium led by the Conval School District. So there have been a number of high-profile legal challenges at the state level and the state Supreme Court level, from Claremont 1, Claremont 2, the Londonderry lawsuit, and now the most recent is the Conval lawsuit. But I would go back to our New Hampshire state constitution, which sets out two fundamental requirements for K-12 education. The first is the state has a duty to pay for the cost of a constitutionally adequate education for every K-12 public school student, and the state constitution dictates that the taxes that the state uses to pay for this education must have a uniform rate across the state. So the state legislature has enacted a comprehensive set of standards for an adequate education that school districts are required to comply with. We have requirements for class sizes, for programs that we offer, for the number of support staff that we have. All of those are outlined in the ED 306 minimum standards that all school districts have to comply with. And while the average cost of an average per year cost for a pupil is around $16,000, the state only gives us $3,700, and they call that adequacy. So what that means is more than 70% of the cost of educating our children in the state of New Hampshire is paid by local property taxpayers. So for example, you have a situation that creates an incredible discrepancy between towns that have more property value than towns that don't. And let me talk about that. So the state of New Hampshire issues a report every year where they assess the equalized valuation of property value for every student within a school district. And the overall, the state average across all towns in New Hampshire, the average land value per pupil is $1,117,573. That's the average. In Goffstown, we have a per pupil equalized assessed tax evaluation of $771,000. So you can see that we're 400 grand less in property value per student. Now, if I go on and include New Boston's situation is even more dire. In the town of New Boston, there's only $676,560 of equalized assessed property evaluation per student, per child. Now, in contrast, as I'm looking at my list here, just down a little bit from New Boston is Newington. So let's just use Newington as an example. Newington has $14,784,511 per pupil. So for every single student, that's the amount of property tax value that is behind that student. So what ends up happening is a town like Newington can raise a significant amount of money and still have a very low education property tax rate, and they can spend sometimes more than twice what we pay. And I'm going to get into what we pay and what our per pupil expenditure is in just a minute. But I really want people to understand that when we talk about the budget, you have to think about it within the context of how we pay for education in the state. Unfortunately, we have a broken system that puts 70% of the burden on the local property taxpayer to pay for education. So even though in Goffstown and New Boston, we have among the lowest per pupil expenditures, it's just really important to compare apples to apples, that you can see how much every school district spends, how much land value they have, and ultimately that's what leads to the property tax rate, which again, I would argue we are in desperate need of relief. And this is what brings me to the Conval lawsuit. So what Conval has done, the basic tenet of their lawsuit, is that they took all the requirements that school districts have to comply with to provide an adequate education, and they actually costed it out. And what they found is that the average cost should be over $10,000 from the state for every single pupil. So I do hope that case was heard 2 weeks ago, and there's only a 4-member court. They brought a 5th justice up from the circuit court as the 5th justice, but I do hope there is some action there. And if there was any movement that would require the legislature to either go back and recost out or redefine adequacy, but my hope would be that there would be new state funding that would come through that would alleviate the burden on the local property taxpayer. This is even further complicated by the fact that we have a what I would affectionately refer to as a fake state revenue, which is called SWEPT, which is the statewide educational property tax. This is money that's raised locally, it's retained locally, and it's identified as a state revenue. So approximately 11% of the money that school districts receive comes in the form of statewide educational property tax. But again, this is nothing more than a local tax at the local level. The money is raised and retained within a town, and then it's distributed as state aid. So I do know that we have a couple of state reps and some folks who are on this call, so I do appreciate it. And if you look at state revenue of all the states in our country, if you removed the statewide educational property tax, New Hampshire is the lowest in what the state actually pays for. And if you include it, we're 3rd from the bottom. So any way you slice it, the state is very much not meeting their constitutional obligation to provide an adequate education for all students in the state of New Hampshire. I'm going to end it there. I am happy to go on a tirade on this topic at any point in time that anyone would like further discussion. In terms of budget vision, we continue to operate a very fiscally conservative school district. You'll see that when I go through the numbers, while at the same time, we're able to maintain a really high quality, refined educational program. And we're very fortunate that we have high student achievement, with our costs being consistently well below the state average. Next slide. The overview of our priorities: safety, teaching and learning, special education, and facilities remain kind of the core 4 areas where this budget focuses. Within our budget, we have collective bargaining agreements that were approved by the voters of Goffstown for both our teachers association as well as our support staff association. Those are included in the what Mr. Gross will describe as the base budget amounts. And he'll describe this in a little more detail. We have budgeted an anticipated 5.7% increase for our guaranteed maximum rate for health insurance. Health insurance continues to be a major cost driver and a significant unpredictable variable. Energy costs associated with heating and cooling our buildings, lighting, all of that major usage continues to be an area that we're monitoring and accurately budgeting for. And you'll see, excuse me, as we go through each school, you'll see some adjustments up and down, as well as the new modular space at the Glen Lake School. We've budgeted for the energy that that building will consume. Next slide. So transportation has been an area where we continue to see an increase in our costs, as well as special ed transportation. So here's another example of what I would define as yet another unfunded mandate in the state of New Hampshire, which of course is in violation of our Constitution. But this past year, without any notice, there was a change to an RSA that required us to provide kindergarten transportation. So that's something we hadn't budgeted for this school year. We didn't have knowledge or time to do so, but that's included in next year's fiscal budget. And this is, again, this is an example of downshifting costs to the local level. Here's the next big one. The New Hampshire retirement system has notified us of a 3% increase in our rates. Now, this isn't really a 3% increase. It's mathematically a 3% increase, but Mr. Gross, if you did some math on the back of the napkin, I bet you'd find that it's probably more like a 20-something% increase. So our percentage that we pay went from 11% to just over 14%. And Scott, the total cost of that we're budgeting is in excess of $700,000, correct?
That's correct.
So this will be an example that you will, the budget committee will hear about this from the town as well. This was not anything that we anticipated or we planned on. And here it is, it's a $700,000 hit to our budget straight away. And had we not had that increase of New Hampshire retirement, our budget increase would have only been 2.43%. So less than a 2.5% increase is what we were anticipating before we got the retirement hit.
And Brian, I should also mention for the budget committee, Selectman Georgiannis is on the call. They also got a similar notification for all of their participants, so police and fire and others. So you're going to see the same thing on the town side. Not as much dollar amounts, but the same percentage increase.
And like us, the town did not have knowledge or any heads up that this was coming. We really would have probably changed our approach, but as you'll see, there are very, very few increases in this budget. There's one position increase that we are asking for, and it's a 0.4 full-time equivalent speech and language pathologist for Glen Lake School. And that's solely based on student service needs. So the only new position that we have this year is a part-time speech position. So COVID has increased some of our costs around IT because it involved purchasing online platforms and communication tools that we really hadn't planned on or anticipated, but some of those are included in this budget as well. Next slide. So in terms of revenue, it's important to just refresh everyone's memory. I know time goes by pretty quickly. This past year, I will also, as much as I complain about revenue, I also pass along my appreciation when some of these kinds of things happen. We received a one-time, what was called fiscal capacity disparity aid, and the town of Goffstown received an unanticipated $1.35 million increase in revenue last year. The school board will recall that's the money that we used to fund the Glen Lake project. So that project had no cost impact to the taxpayers of Goffstown. And actually the project came in less than the 1.35 million. So there'll be some money that'll actually be used for property tax relief. Our stabilization grants, which is again another level of state funding, was restored to the 100% level from 2012. And again, not to belabor school funding, but there was an anticipated 4% a year decrease. The legislature did put that on pause, which we appreciate. We are seeing a decrease in our free and reduced lunch counts. That impacts our adequacy. So there are a couple of elements within adequacy. As a base amount, we get about $3,700 per pupil. And then we get a little bit extra if a student has special education needs, if students are free and reduced lunch, if students are English language learners, or if students are not proficient readers by third grade. Those items I just identified get a little extra revenue for us. And unfortunately, we're seeing a reduction because we've had a decrease in our free and reduced lunch counts. That's a little troubling to us, only that right now, the federal government, people may not be aware of this, are paying for all school lunches and all school breakfasts free of cost to any families until probably the December timeframe. And unfortunately, despite the Herculean efforts of our great food service director, Megan Bizzaro, who's on the call, we have seen a reduction in the number of applicants. It's hard to get people to apply when everything's for free. And unfortunately, the free isn't really free, of course, and it comes to an end. But we have seen a reduction there. We've seen a slight investment income due to low returns, a slight decrease due to low returns on deposits. And lastly, we have another revenue stream from a federal program. This is not a state program, called the Medicaid to Schools program. And unfortunately, last year, the state of New Hampshire, the Department of Ed, put up a number of administrative roadblocks that included emergency action by JALCAR, the Joint Administrative Committee on Administrative Rules. But the end result was that all school districts in New Hampshire had significant reductions in the Medicaid to School program due to requirements that the Department of Ed imposed on us and the State Board of Ed. So you'll see that when Mr. Gross reviews the revenues. So I always like to start with the numbers and tell you right up front what we're looking at. FY21, which is our current fiscal year budget, is $43,725,909. Our new FY22 default budget, which you have to remember is constructed in accordance with RSA 40. There are very specific requirements of how the default budget is constructed, is $45,384,100. And for what we would identify as new spending, which includes that one singular part-time speech pathologist position, in total, new spending that's being proposed is $139,012. That's the difference between the proposed FY22 budget and the default. Scott?
Yeah, I was going to say, pardon the typo there. It is FY22 new spending.
Yep.
The other thing that you should also know is that in terms of new spending, any salary increases for non-collective bargaining unit members, those are would be our administrators or those who are not part of a collective bargaining agreement. Those are part of new spending as well. And as we go through the budget, you'll see some things like the increased cost for Glen Lake. That's new spending because it's not part of the default. So we'll go over more detail about what's in the default, what's not in the default. But I just wanted to let you know that it comprises a lot of little things that roll up into that almost that 140,000.
Thank you, Scott. So in total, the delta between our proposed FY22 budget and our FY21 budget is $1,797,203, or 4%. As I said before, just the retirement system increase is $735,000. So without that retirement increase, our budget delta would have been 2.4%. And I truly wish that's what we were presenting to you this evening. And I'm troubled by the unanticipated retirement system increase. Next slide. So what makes up the increase from FY22 to default? Essentially, salaries and benefits make up the majority of it. Those were contracts that were approved by the voters for our Goffstown teachers, as well as our support staff, our two unions in Goffstown. And then the retirement system increase and health insurance. Next slide. So transportation between regular ed and special ed, including that new requirement for kindergarten transportation that again was not something that we anticipated, is an increase of $225,000.
I wanted to jump in on that, Brian, if I may. The kindergarten you'll see is around $60,000 to $70,000 for that, but it's really the special ed is what's driving this. And I know Jennifer Dolph, who's our special ed director, is on the call now. And just to give you the world in which we live. I mean, we had one day where she called me up and said, hey, we have a student who is no longer going to require an out-of-district placement. And then at 7 o'clock that night, I get another email that we have a new family that moved in that has, several children that are going to need services, one of which is an out-of-district placement to the tune of probably with transportation, $150,000. So the special ed transportation piece, I think, is up 160,000, 150 to 160,000 due to mostly out of district placements.
And those would include placements by the court
Right.
and any other students that might be involved in, for example, the foster care system. So continuing down the increases, there's an $11,000 increase at the SAU, and there's a $12,000 increase because we, as part of our area agreement with New Boston, we have to update an appraisal of the Goffstown High School and Mountain View Middle School facility. Those campuses and the assessed evaluation of them determines a rental charge that New Boston pays. So that is a contractual obligation of our area agreement. And Scott, I think we do that every 5 years. Does that sound?
Yeah, every 5.
So it's been a while since we've done that, but it's up this year. So Mr. Gross already mentioned the non-collective bargaining salary increases, and this was actually a bit of a change to the default budget a few years ago, but all of our non-union people, any salary increase is not part of default, and year after year, you have to continue to add that. We've got some increases in transportation, the speech piece, and then, as I've already said, energy use and software. So the default budget calculation is, again, as I already mentioned, in collaboration and review of RSA 40, and there are specific pieces that are not considered new spending. So this is, we probably don't need to speak a lot about this, Scott, because I think this is the second year. I think last year was the first year of the change to RSA. I think it was 4013. And so this year, that's a repeat.
Yeah, I added it only because there's about 5 or 6 new budget committee members, so.
Fair enough. Just a few reports that are published. Our average teacher salaries fall just a little bit below the state average of $59,198. Goffstown, according to the state, is sitting at 57. More than anything, that has to do with really the longevity of your teaching staff. So if you have a younger staff or maybe a more experienced staff, as well as there simply are some districts that pay better than we do. So certainly the districts listed on this chart before you would, perhaps with the exception of Pembroke, would all be examples of school districts that pay teacher salaries at a higher rate, as well as support staff and administrators than we do. Next slide. So the continued funding of the CIP type elements through our capital reserve fund. So where budget committee members will recall that we discussed the creation of a capital reserve fund for many years. We worked very closely with the budget committee. We, again, for those of you who are still on the committee, we thank you for your support when we move forward with the creation of the capital reserve fund. This is a fund that we can only use for the replacement of existing capital assets. And that's very specific language that the budget committee helped us craft. So I won't read all of these, but these are just some examples of things that we either have or would anticipate using the capital reserve fund at some point in the future. The school board has not deliberated on a recommended deposit amount for the capital reserve fund, so we'll plan to bring that to the budget committee in November. Next slide. So our historical enrollment, our enrollment is down a bit right now, particularly due to COVID. We've seen some students that have left us for homeschooling. We've seen some students that have left us for attending religious schools, and we have some students that have left us to attend the Virtual Learning Academy, which is a charter school. It's still a public school in New Hampshire, but it's a charter school. And I should probably point out that all charter schools in New Hampshire receive about $2,000 more in adequacy from the state than traditional public schools. Not quite sure why, but the premise being that maybe they don't have space and we have more space, but all charter schools get more money and adequacy than traditional public schools. But our enrollment is holding fast at about 2,800. And that also does not include our students at New Boston Central School. Next slide. Scott, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, one of the biggies is, and Principal Stoyle will explain this later, is there are no role models, preschool students at Glen Lake. That's 50 right there. That would add to that total. So that's a relatively big number. And as Denise knows, the attendance is it's going up and down, and it's very challenging. It was one of the most challenging years in terms of dealing with attendance counts. And I know the high school and others have been working hard to get that number. It's just a more volatile thing.
And Scott, if you look at from 17 to 18 to 19, we went from 2804 to 2889 to 2921. So unlike most school districts that have seen a decrease in student enrollment prior to COVID, we had continued to see an increase in our enrollment. So, again, I think there's a lot that is really turned upside down by the pandemic, and we would anticipate that number going back up in the very near future, certainly when COVID has subsided or there is a robust vaccination program in place. Next slide. So projected class sizes are holding a little lower at Bartlett, and that mostly has to do with our actual physical space within the classrooms. So let's not forget Bartlett, the first part of Bartlett was built in 1920, and the classrooms are all really undersized. So again, if you think about the ability to have students in those rooms, how small they are, it does lead to a little smaller cohort class size at Bartlett. But Maple is in the low to mid 20s in most of the grades, and Mountain View is in the low 20s. Next. Special education, we look at this as a percentage of our total population, and the total in Goffstown is around 17% of our total population, which is very consistent with state averages.
And Brian, the one thing that jumps out here is just Glen Lake. So Glen Lake is seeing, as you can see here, 48 identified students in 2020, up to 59. So at the elementary school level, the percentage of identified kids is jumping, whereas at the higher grades, it's relatively stable.
But in total, we've seen an increase in the number of special education students. Other populations needing some intensive supports are English language learners. We have a total of 51 students speaking 16 different languages, and we have 2 professional staff that provide all of the required ELL instruction to those students. So this would be yet another example of something that schools are required to do based on something called access testing. We have to provide a certain prescriptive number of hours. And again, we get a little bit of extra money for adequacy for ELL students, but it doesn't come remotely close to the cost associated with that. Next slide. So free and reduced, we mentioned this a little bit. You can see, for example, if you look at Bartlett, Bartlett's a pretty good indicator, going from over 30% for the last several years to down to 23% is a pretty significant drop. We don't have a lot of a great explanation. I think a good economy prior to COVID certainly was a contributing factor. But again, now that families don't need to complete the paperwork to get free breakfast and lunch because the federal government is paying for all of that, we will continue to have a little bit of a dip, and unfortunately that will hurt our adequacy. Next slide. So I mentioned per pupil costs, and if you're so inclined, we could share the link with the budget committee. I normally give this out as a paper copy to all of you each year, but the New Hampshire Department of Ed publishes a report that compares every elementary school, every middle school, and every high school using a consistent funding and expenditure evaluation. So in education, you can't do this in the town, but you can do this for the school. You can compare Maple Ave Elementary School to every single elementary school in the state based on how much money we spend. So on the municipal side, this doesn't exist. As far as I know, you can't compare fire department costs or DPW or town hall, or police, any of those. But in New Hampshire, you can compare all schools. So let's take a look at how we compared. So you'll see here that the state average, and by the way, these reports are always a year or two behind. They'll update this probably in the November time period. So that's when the next year's numbers will come out. But based upon the last available numbers, the state average for an elementary school cost was $16,520. And in Goffstown, that cost is $13,724. So you can see we're almost $3,000 less than the state average. And by the way, that doesn't even include districts that spend a lot more. So if anyone's so interested, you could shout out a town and I can tell you exactly what they pay, because I've got the report sitting here, and there are many, many school districts that spend more than $20,000 per pupil in the state of New Hampshire. Next slide. Actually, you go back, Scott, you had one more thing there that I should have shared. FY19 to FY18, the state average cost went up 3.3%. And for us, it only went up 0.5%. So again, this is reflective of a very fiscally conservative school district that unfortunately, based upon how we pay for education, we are very cognizant of the impact of everything we do on our local taxpayers. Now let's talk about middle school. You're going to see a pattern here. Tell me when you see the pattern. So the state average for middle schools on the last year available was 15,490, and Goffstown was 12,748. So for us, we are the second lowest middle school per pupil out of 62 middle schools in the state. So less than $2,700 less than the state average. And again, there are many, many school districts that are spending in excess of $20,000 per pupil. Next slide. So tell me when you see the pattern. Here's the high school. So the high school per pupil average, $16,600. Goffstown High School, $14,158. And that puts us $2,400 below the average cost and the sixth lowest high school cost in the state out of 73 high schools. And I think the other ones are in Manchester, and I think Pelham might be included in there. So you know what we spend comparatively. Now, how do we do? So if you look at the bright blue line on each of these numbers on this histogram show how Goffstown is scoring on state assessments compared to the state. So this particular assessment is English language arts, looking at the number of students who are proficient or above on that state metric. And you can see, despite the way below per pupil expenditures, our student achievement is above the state average in every category. Next slide. Same story, moving on to math. With one blip in 8th grade, we're working on that. You can see right here in 8th grade, this is the one area that we were just slightly below the state average. And I know that Mrs. Kohler has some plans to address that. And school board members, when I mentioned earlier about some of our shortcomings in middle school math and some of our larger class sizes, that is a factor for this particular assessment metric. Next slide. So again, this continues to be, I'm not going to continue to go over every single one of these, but what you'll see is a consistent pattern of low per pupil expenditures and proficiency levels at or above the state level. Next slide. Same story. This one is looking at the SAT, which is our new a couple years ago accountability measure for high school. So you can see that, again, we've continued to outperform the state. Next. So again, I'm not going to belabor that. So this is the same type of thing, looking at the SAT for math. So in summary, this is something that people have heard me say many times, and I can't emphasize this enough. We have a consistent, high quality return on the investment in the Goffstown School District. We have a cost per pupil that is well below, sometimes almost as much as what we actually receive for adequacy. That's how much we are below the per pupil expenditure, and our performance continues to be at or above the state averages. So we continue to run a very fiscally conservative school district that we believe is a very good investment for the community of Goffstown, as well as our New Boston partners. So with that, I would pause and be happy to answer any questions. This really is just a high-level overview, and you'll get into all the details as we go through, starting with the district budget and Mr. Gross's presentation. So I would pause there, Madam Chair, and Scott and I will look to see if we see any hands that might have questions.
Yes, thank you, Brian. I see Skylar Sund. Do you have a question? He's muted. I thought I saw his hand up. Is anybody?
I didn't see him, Heather.
Yeah, he had his hand in front of the camera. I'm not-
Eileen McNinney has a question.
All right, go ahead, Eileen.
Good evening. Hi, Brian. With all of the challenges, and I know that there's quite a few of them, how are other districts handling all the surprises? Have you any idea?
Yeah, I think actually Scott would also be a good one to speak to this. So we've had a number of what we would anticipate, what we would call unanticipated costs, whether it's plexiglass shields or it's personal protective equipment, masks, gowns for nurses, all of those kinds of things. Certainly technology has been a significant increase for us. We have not added any positions, Eileen. So for example, I know that the Merrimack School District added 5 nurses to their school district. They added a significant number of additional teachers. We have not done that. We do anticipate, I just shared with the school board at their meeting prior to the budget committee coming on, that we are coming up short in the area of mathematics at the middle school. So we likely will have a bit of a one-year cost increase there. But Scott, do you want to, you've actually costed out what we've spent on COVID, and you've also know how much we've received in ESSER and CARES Fund. Do you want to speak to that, please, Mr. Gross?
Sure. We've been keeping track of our expenses because we thought we would get FEMA reimbursement. And about 3 weeks ago on a Friday afternoon, we were told you're not getting a FEMA reimbursement. And we were expecting upwards of $125,000 reimbursement. Although we did purchase a lot of PPE, those sneeze guards, desk shields, et cetera, we did not go crazy with it. I think we were very appropriate in what we purchased. Other school districts, like the superintendent mentioned, one school district spent $100,000 just on cloth masks for every student and faculty member. We did not come close to that. That being said, we did spend about $300,000 on IT, with it between servers and Chromebooks and laptops, some of which was funded through ESSER grants. We just purchased more laptop computers, so that was a little bit more. That was probably another $175,000, I think, in laptops. And lastly, we did spend quite a bit on cleaning supplies and equipment. So we do have those foggers and electrostatic sprayers that we're able to clean and disinfect rooms like in 5 minutes. So and then along with all the extra hand sanitizer and PPE, et cetera. But it's Eileen, it's a great question. I think that we've been fairly prudent, in doing so. Again, not knowing whether you're going to be remote, hybrid, all in. It's so unpredictable. We still don't know. So we've purchased enough PPE for all those contingencies, and if we need to purchase more, we will. But right now, I think we're weathering it from that standpoint fairly well.
Good. So then I have a second question, and this one probably goes back to Brian, and this is talking about the free lunch program. I know it's historically been a sort of a gauge on how your funding, how much funding you actually get from the state. And right now, since no one has to actually apply for it, it's kind of a given. That program ends at the end of the year. Do we foresee that parents are going to have to apply then and it's going to come back to us, or do we think that it's just a lost cause?
Yeah, I think Megan, our food service director, can probably adequately
Okay.
respond to that one.
Hi, folks. The way the language actually reads is the funding will continue until December 31st or until they run out of money. To put it very bluntly, we have been working with our families, trying to set up our program so that if they do run out of money, say in November, our families will be taken care of, if you will, so then they just slide right into their eligibilities as normal, or as they might be newly qualified for. So we're hoping that we've kind of laid that track. We still have a number of families who have not reapplied because we do have a grace period for the beginning of the year where their eligibility rolls over. I have some folks actually going to be doing some phone calling to families to make sure that, you know, we're ready for when and if the monies do run out. So does that answer your question, or
it sort of does. I guess what my question was is right now, if we're running at about 20%, where we normally historically run at about 30, and if the program ends at the end of December, do we anticipate that we're going back up into the 30s in January?
That's really anybody's guess. I can tell you last year, the state, across the state, they saw an 11% decrease in students who were eligible for the free and reduced meal price program. So we were not alone.
Okay.
Districts like Raymond, who are typically very, very high in that economic indicator, were lost like 20%. So I would
really, if at 11%, we're right with the average right now.
I would say we are.
Okay.
You
That
know.
really answered the question.
Okay, sorry about that.
I was just looking to see if we're going to recoup any losses, but it doesn't look that way.
Unfortunately, that number relies on people not doing well economically, and that's the sad part of it. That's a sad reality.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Megan. Does anybody else have any questions, comments before we move on to the next presentation?
Madam Chair, I see Mr. Alexander has his hand up.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian and Scott, for the presentation. My question specifically is around the area agreement, $12,000 added in FY 2020 default. Is there a reason why it was added in the default and not in the proposed? And I understand it's like something mandated, but it's something that happens like every 4 years or something, like you said.
Right.
So why is that in the default?
So we included that because the default budget RSA allows us to include any contractual obligations. So that would include things like our teacher raises that the voters approved. But for this particular one, because it is a requirement of the area agreement, that would be considered a contractual obligation, and we included it in the default budget. That would be an example of something, Joe, that would not, that money would then be removed the subsequent year. We wouldn't carry that $12,000 forward. We would look at that essentially as a one-time expenditure that for us is contractually obligated.
Yeah, I think the other reason, Joe, is that the voters of Goffstown approved the area agreement, okay? Not the school board members alone, but the voters. So when the voters approve a contract between union members, in this case, they voted and approved, they are the ultimate authority. So it does become part of the default because of that. Okay.
Great, thank you. That answers the question. Thanks.
I think Ellen had a question too, if I wasn't mistaken. I just saw, I was scanning the crowd.
Yeah, I keep scanning. I keep missing everybody. Go ahead, Ellen. Ellen, you're muted. There you go.
When people do start applying for the free and reduced lunch later in the school year, will that have the impact of increasing our adequacy monies coming in this year? Or are we lost for that because it wasn't put in at the beginning of the school year?
Scott, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think it is a rolling number, and Megan, if you could also help us on that one. I think those change throughout the year, and we do get credit for when students do eventually apply. So the big thing for us is that they apply, whether it be now in November, December. If they apply in April, it doesn't bode well for us. So it's important that we capture this over the next couple of months.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's tied to the BOY numbers that we put in or the EOY numbers.
It's actually, I believe it's tied to the beginning of the year numbers. So this will have, and by the way, you'll see in the revenue projections that Mr. Gross will share, we had a reduction last year. So we are expecting a reduction in our adequacy numbers for this year, and we would expect another decrease next year. Again, this is one that Megan has done a great job. We've worked really hard. I've encouraged families over and over to continue to apply for this. You know, we want the families that need that assistance to get it. And unfortunately, it will mean that we have a reduction in adequacy.
Thanks, Brian. Ellen, did I see your hand again?
Yeah, I've heard that, yes, I know the number rolls and it changes as we go through the year. This year being rather unusual in the number of people applying for it because they're getting it for free. I'm thinking we're going to have a more than usual increase in students needing free and reduced lunch. When that happens, since I just heard it's a beginning of the year figure, when this increase happens in December, January, whenever, will our adequacy funding calculation increase with it?
Yeah, if I can respond to that one. So this has been a topic of conversation for business administrators because we're not alone on this one. And what they're trying to do is to lobby the state to say, listen, every school district is seeing lower free and reduced numbers. So we're all in that same boat, and they're going to be lobbying or petitioning and say, okay, can you take a look at this again? Because we anticipate that when this program runs out of money, as Megan said, it's December 31st, or when it runs out of money, there's a strong likelihood that every single district is going to see a spike, is going to see an increase in their free and reduced. But right now, it seems like it's artificially low. So I know our intention from a business administrator perspective is to have conversations with the state for another look at that.
So as of right now, we would not see the increase go with it in revenue as of right now.
Right, but keep in mind that all of these things are changing like from month to month. Some good, some bad. So right now we lost out on 125,000 in FEMA. We could see another, CARES Act or legislation from the federal government. We could see the governor, has he spoken to, perhaps he has some discretionary monies available too that he might be able to help districts in terms of those lost FEMA money. So I look at it from the perspective, we just have to go with the flow on some of these things, and we're going to see some increases and some decreases, but we still have to be kind of conservative in our approach.
Thank you, Scott. Ellen, are you good?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
So before we move on, is everybody good? Trying to scroll through, I don't see any more hands. Okay, Brian, so who's up next?
I think it's going to be me. I'm going to go
pass
over
it off to
revenue.
Mr. Gross.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm going to
Great.
share my screen. You're going to receive this in your packets for school board members when you do get a packet, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but the revenues are in there. And same thing with budget committee members. You will be getting this when you get your budget committee packets when we start your school deliberations. What I wanted to share with you, again, you have 2019, 2020, 2020, 21, and then this is what we're projecting as revenues. So I'm going to just hit a couple of things. We're predicting, I would have liked to have gone a little more on the tuition side, but with COVID, I'm a little bit skeptical in the sense that New Boston has seen more of a share of students go the homeschool route or leave the district type route. So I'm a little concerned to go too much there. What you'll also point out is that on the other local revenue, this coming year, I dropped it down to 20,000 because our facility use policy has been suspended. So we're not getting revenues that we would ordinarily get from people renting our buildings. But I'm bumping that up next year because I'm anticipating that we will be in a better position. Our special education aid, this is when we get reimbursement for some of our higher cost special needs students. And again, I'm bumping that up slightly. I talked to our director and we think that's appropriate. Our building aid, the one I missed that one. This will be the last year of the Goffstown High School bond. So the 2021, 2022 year will be the last year that we will be making a bond payment and an interest payment. And will also be the last year where we get this $262,000. So 2022, 23, that'll be a zero. But by the same token, we're going to lose like $550,000 of a bond and a principal and interest payment. Everything else is pretty much, flat in terms of revenues. I did increase our grants revenue, but that's one where we have, it's a push because I've increased the budget by a little bit, and I've also increased the expenditure side, but I've also increased the revenues because those have to be a zero. Child nutrition programs, that's similar to this current year. Medicaid distribution, I'm sorry, this is the one that we talked about before, and it wasn't Medicare, it's Medicaid. We do get reimbursement from the federal government. Last year, they really clamped down on what you could get reimbursements for. Our special ed director has done a great job in terms of getting training for all of our staff. I'm going to be going through it, I think, next week or the week after, so that we can recoup as much money as possible through the government for these services that we provide. So you'll see that I've increased that by 150,000. By comparison, a few years ago, we were getting, I think, $350,000 of Medicaid reimbursement. So again, we got a long way to go, but I think we're on the right track there. Our commodities, this is more food service, so I bumped it up a little bit. And so as you can see, we're going to get about $300,000 or $400,000 more in terms of school revenues than what we have projected for this year. The biggie that we often have is, the monies that are left over and the unanticipated revenues. This is very wildly unpredictable. Like last year, we had, as you can see, we used $1.7 million to reduce taxes. Will that happen again in 21, 22? I don't know. It's very, do I think that number might be somewhere between 1.4 and 1.7? Yes, but I'm trying to be conservative on the revenue side. We might be able to push that a little bit higher, but I just simply don't know. In terms of our fund balance retained, this is that 2.5% contingency fund. This is what the school board is allowed to keep at the for emergency type purposes. You'll recall we have used it a couple of times, and the budget committee and school board have been involved in that. This is a tool that the school board has at its disposal, so that if you're trying to manage the tax rate, you can use this number to manage the tax rate. So at the end of the year, you might say we might want to only retain $200,000 for emergency purposes and have the rest go back to lower the tax rate. So that's something that we'll be discussing over the next couple of months. The one thing that I wanted to share on the revenue side that we talked about before was this adequacy aid. So we had projected about $7.65 million. I lowered that by about $150,000 simply because we saw about $180,000 decrease off of our projection for this year. So again, that was due to that lower free and reduced lunch counts, as well as our lower ADM. So we have some kids, if a student leaves the district, if they decide to be homeschooled, we lose the adequacy that goes along with that. And last but not least, the swept amount. So we've lost money in these two, both the net adequacy and the swept, and to the tune of about 180,000 this year. So all that being said and done, we would have to raise somewhere between 25.8 to $26 million on the tax rate for tax purposes. So as we get closer throughout the process, I'll give you those. I don't like to get into the business of predicting tax rates, but I can at least tell you right now, for every $1,700,000 that you spend, it's $1 on the tax rate. And Dan is the former budget committee chair, and I know he used to break it down. And so it's very good for you to know that, in terms of, so that you know that every time that you spend $170,000, it's 10 cents. Very kind of critical to know that. Are there any questions on the revenue side?
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, I'm looking.
Ellen looks like she has one.
There we go. Ellen, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have two. Food service. I'm unmuted. Okay. Food service. Am I correct that we no longer have the funds, saved funds set aside for the food service that we used to have?
You would be incorrect. So we have a little over $100,000, and that Megan's going to cover that when she does the presentation. That's called a fund balance.
Right.
We've typically
Okay, so we do have funds there.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we have used fund balance for larger equipment type purchases.
Right.
And Megan's going to talk to you. She has something coming up where we have to replace our food service software. So that's something that you would probably use fund balance monies for, but we do have money in our fund balance.
Okay, thank you. I thought I had read or heard a while back that that was all gone due to the COVID stuff, but I'm glad to hear we still have funds. The second thing is the high school bond, which is soon going to be disappearing, could be disappearing from the budget. I would like to say, unless the board and community take steps to do some future financial planning with regard to future space needs. And I don't know at what point the board needs to take that discussion up with the budget committee and the community. I don't know if it's in 2022 or 2021 or 2022.
It would more than likely be a next year discussion. And as I stated before, let's just say that principal and interest, we have, let's say, $570,000 of expenditure and $270,000 hypothetically of revenue that's coming in. So our net next year will be $300,000 to the good. That's where you as a school board might say, hey, let's take that 300,000 and put that in our capital reserve fund, or maybe you establish another capital reserve fund, because it wouldn't have, it's an impact on the tax rate because you'd be substituting one for another, but that would be a next year type discussion.
Okay, so not until the 2022 voting.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
And again, it's about a net 300,000. The other thing that you should also know is that you're seeing the last year of your portable lease at Maple Avenue and Bartlett, and that's like another 130,000 that you'll be to the positive. So I almost wish it was this year, because with that darn retirement thing, but next year you'll be in a little better spot.
And those two are both coming up the same time.
Same time. They both, these are your last payments, and you'll see that when we go to the budget. You'll see that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. All right, just looking to see if anybody else has a question or comment before we move on.
I'm looking too. I don't see anyone.
All right, so who is next?
It's still me. And it's
okay. Sorry, Scott.
It's okay. I'm not offended. It's the district side of the budget. So I'll share my screen again. So for those who are relatively new to the budget committee, we have budgets for each one of our schools, but we also have a budget for the district. And some of the larger district expenses, let's say, are transportation. So transportation is not broken down by each school. So we might spend, let's say, $2 million on transportation. We don't break it down by school, but we do put it into under a district type line. We also have IT and some others that are more better to be under the purview of district expenses. Special education is another one. Hold on one second, because I'm getting a text message from Mr. Manzo. And I don't, just give me 1 second. All right. So as I wait for him, and I think he'll probably pop up in terms of to let him in. So in terms of the district budget, again, this includes special ed, regular transportation, our substitute teacher lines, summer programming, school board, our administrative salary pool, retirement stipends, a whole slew of different things, technology, our athletics, co-curriculars, et cetera. So what you'll see is in our current budget, we had a little over $9 million, and it's going in terms of our base spending, which is your default, $9.31 million. I'm sorry, $9.371 million. And then in terms of new spending, about $73,000. And the difference between our proposed budget right now and the current budget is about $275,000. So where is that money coming from? I just want to give you an overview of some of the high dollar amounts that are in here. We've level funded our teacher substitute line. Although we did, if you recall, we did increase our substitute per diem, and we've done that simply because to attract and retain our substitute teachers. We are, with COVID-19, we're trying to have dedicated subs in our buildings. We've had a hard time finding subs. So I think we should be okay here. We did save on this line when we went remote. So again, we're trying to hedge our bets on this line. If we need to spend more, obviously we will. The big one that you'll see is this non-capital software. Brian alluded to it earlier. We had to bring on a lot of different platforms to deal with connected learning. That could be anything from Seesaw, which is more of a platform for our elementary school grades. We brought on a plagiarism detection software system. We've gone to electronic signatures. We've had to do a lot to reinforce us, people working and learning remotely. Retirement stipends, again, this is contractual. It's a very similar amount to last year, $136,000. No changes there really. We have increased $15,000 on our special education professional services line. These are when we have to use a contracted service for things like speech or psychology or behavior. This is a line, quite honestly, that depending upon how our staffing goes, we might have to do budget transfers. What I mean there is that we might have a position on our budget for a speech pathologist, but if we can't find one and we still have to provide those services, we might have to spend $80,000 to $100,000 with a contractor versus our own employee. So we endeavor to have our own employees, but in situations over the last couple of years, speech in particular has been one that's been very challenging to find those folks. Our tuition for out-of-district placements, you'll see an increase of $58,000. This is attributed because the state of New Hampshire, the Department of Education allows for a 5% increase in those providers that provide the out-of-district placement. So every year we typically budget what the state has allowed, and it's 5% this year. And they typically will increase by that amount of money. Don't have a whole lot of choice. And again, these are the students where it is in their IEP that they have it, or it could be a court-ordered placement where they have to get services outside of the school district. And depending upon where those are, it could be up north, it could be down in Massachusetts. We have them, we have students placed all throughout New Hampshire and parts of Massachusetts. Special education, I mentioned this earlier. We just have more students that are in these placements, and some of them are based upon the nature of the student. We can't even share a bus, so that you might have one student going to a particular facility, and with that monitor on the bus, it could be $50,000 to transport that kid for the year. So that's why we had that increase here of $163,000. And again, that's part of the default budget because it's mandated in terms of their services. Kindergarten transportation, as the superintendent alluded to, this now requires us to provide transportation to all kindergarten students. Well, in prior years, because we only have half-day kindergarten program, we would provide transportation in the morning and also provide transportation on the way home, but not midday. Now we're required to provide that midday service, and we have budgeted for 4 school buses, and we're going to break up the routes in between, into 4 quadrants essentially. Even though we have upwards of 22, 23 regular buses that are going around the district, we're only going to have 4 for that midday portion. And that is it for the district in terms of highlights. You might have some questions on some individual lines here and there, but I just wanted to hit on some of the bigger ones.
All right, thank you, Scott. Can you go back to the, there you go. All right,
I had
does
to let
anybody,
people in, so.
does anybody have any questions or comments for Scott before we move on? I am seeing no hands. All right, Scott, go on. You can
All right.
continue.
So I think we're, if that is the case, then I think we're going to bring Principal Kathy Stoyle. I think she's coming on. So I just want to make sure that, there she is. Some folks have had some technical difficulties where they've dropped off and they've texted me. So it's to be expected with these Zoom calls. So Kathy, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Great.
So with that, I'm gonna share Kathy's PowerPoint, and Kathy, you just let me know when you want me to advance the slide, okay?
Okay, will do. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kathy.
Thanks. All right, so this is Glen Lake Schools budget request for 2021-2022. You can see our building, and here's the addition you can see added on there. And our fiscal year 21 budget is currently $2,051,431. The base budget for fiscal year 22 is $2,267,337. And the new spending there is $37,837. The total fiscal year 22 requested is $2,305,174. And the total difference is $253,743, most of which is in the default budget. So Glen Lake has a current enrollment of, hang on, just got a little pop up here. I got to get out of my way so I can see. There we go. So we have 179 students. Last year we had 220 at this time. Preschool role models have not been yet added to classes because we're working first to meet the needs of preschoolers identified with special needs during our reopening, as that is the reason for our preschool program. We would normally accept approximately 56 role models for this number of classes. So right now, looking at just those identified students, we've got class sizes of 6 to 7 for preschool. And we have 129 kindergarten students in 8 sessions. And we had last year 135. So we're pretty close. We have some kids who have gone to homeschooling this year. We have some students for whom we're providing special education services still on a drop-in basis. But even with those situations, our kindergarten classes are still averaging 16 students.
Kathy, someone texted me a question, but I think it's worth pointing out is that in terms of our preschool students, it's not a state mandate, it's a federal mandate in terms of IDEA, correct? Starting at age 3?
Yes, yeah. So preschool students are identified, and I think I go a little bit into that on a slide coming up, so.
Okay.
That. So here it is, what makes Glen Lake School unique. So we have rolling enrollment for preschool. Our special needs students enter on their 3rd birthday throughout the year. And we're never quite sure of how many we're going to have entering throughout the year or what their needs will be. So they range widely from, maybe needing some speech language therapy or needing multiple therapies throughout their day and different types of support. But based upon current trends, we're anticipating adding, based on what recent years have looked like, in excess of 18 identified 3-year-olds by June. And then keeping in mind that students can enter at any point after their 3rd birthday as well through Child Find. And we anticipate adding identified 4-year-olds throughout the year through Child Find as well. And then like the other schools, as we're working with our kindergartners, we might find that they need some assistance as well. So we will end up identifying some of those students. They don't generally add to the student population, although occasionally they do. Sometimes students come to us who've been going to a kindergarten program somewhere else, and they're referred to us through that Child Find process as well. So there's no mechanism really to forecast the number of those students or their unique needs as they are coming into our program. And that preschool program accounts for the high percentage of special needs students at Glen Lake.
And Kathy, it's not only is it the number, but it's also the types of needs, right? So you're seeing an increase in nonverbal students, and that's not something you could predict necessarily.
No, and I think it is something that we're seeing more of in recent years, where we've had a number of really high needs special education students, more so than we've had in the past. So that's something of note, that and that doesn't seem to be changing at all. A lot of really medically involved students as well, and those medical needs impact their needs in school. So we're, between even medical services and more involved physical therapy and other types of therapy, where we're, needing to bring other people into the building to help serve those needs, whether it's vision or hearing or those kinds of things, that we're seeing just an increased need of that kind of across the board over the last few years. That seems to be holding true as we move forward. So again, keeping in mind those preschool role models that haven't yet joined us, we had 177 students in October of 2017, 216 in 2018. We went up to 220 at this time last year. That continued to increase as we went through the year. And we have 179, and actually, really by the time this was submitted, we had 2 more added, and that continues to grow. And I'm not sure as we look at 56 role models, is that what the number 235 here, I think, refers to? What would?
Yeah, I think we were trying to show that this 179 is an anomaly because we don't have role model students in the school. And in terms of, people might look at that and say, well, why do we put an addition on the building? We put an addition on, or put the modular, because our numbers were going up like crazy. And if you factor in the role models, it does really display that.
Yep. And I think that's something that, given a non-COVID year, we would expect to be back there right away again. So our staffing overview, we have 4 kindergarten teachers, 4 preschool teachers / case managers. They're also special education, early childhood special educators who case manage students as well. We have 4.6 special educators and related service providers. And that includes an OT, 1.6 speech language pathologists, 1 special educator, and 1 autism support teacher / special educator. And we're requesting an additional 0.4 speech language pathologist for 21-22. We have 0.2 of a guidance counselor. She spends 1 day a week with us. We have 15 paraprofessionals, which is 15 people, but it is the equivalent of just under 14 full-time equivalent there. We have 1 nurse, 2 secretaries, 1.6 building administrators, and a custodian. And the bulk of the increase, that $253,743 in our budget over this year's budget, is encompassed in the default budget increase. And those increases have been detailed in the presentations before this. So the rest of it is an increase in electricity, $5,000 to power the new modular building. And then the 0.4 speech language pathologist are the biggest contributors to our new budget increase of $37,837. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Kathy. There you go, Scott. Let me just look through. Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Stoyl? I scroll. Oh, Ginny, do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Are you finding that, I know you don't have full enrollment with your school yet. Are you finding, I've heard comments with different therapy people that I know, that in other schools, they've had difficulty getting the PPE that they want when they go from schools to schools, because they're not like a person in that school all the time. So they have to go in and ask for those kinds of things. Do you have those things out so they're available to everyone that goes in? Or are they in a closet so people have to ask? And
No, people know where to get them. And then if they ever had a problem finding them, Olivia, our school nurse, handles that and will direct anybody if they can't immediately find the thing where it's supposed to be, even if they can't remember where it's supposed to be, we can direct them. But we've tried to make sure that our itinerant staff are just part of us as much as anybody else is. So we've worked pretty closely with them to make sure that they're feeling connected and they have what they need in order to travel from building to building and come into our building and feel safe and welcome. So.
And also, since little ones are kind of slurpy kids,
yeah.
especially with COVID being an issue, do you have gowns and anything, like if someone were to come in and say, look, I want to be a little bit more careful, I'd like a gown, I'd like a shield, I'd like whatever. Do you have that stuff readily available for anybody, and they can ask for it without feeling like they're going over bounds with?
Absolutely. Yep. We have that. We have staff that are doing diaper changing. We have kids that aren't really able to socially distance effectively. We're trying to teach them the whole time. We're trying to teach them about wearing masks. But we have face shields in addition to, we have surgical masks across the board for all of our staff every day, because they're a little more reliable than cloth masks. So we want to make sure that those are available to them. We have face shields that are available, and gowns that are available to staff also. And all they have to do is ask. If they don't, know where one is, we'll point them in the right direction. And we've had staff doing that, different situations on different days. We also have a supply of masks for students who may not have brought one, or who, like you said, are, slurpy, kind of, chewing on their mask or drooling through it or whatever. We've got masks to replace that, so we can switch those out throughout the day.
Is there anything that's not included in this budget that you would like to be included in the budget?
I think right now we're feeling pretty good. That speech language pathology position is so needed. Our numbers have continued to increase over the last several years, and we're currently, right now, we have a caseload of 82 students, and 79 of those have speech and that's a big number. So we're so really having or the equivalent of 2 full-time speech language pathologists will be just huge for us, and will really make a difference. So so that would be much appreciated.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jenny. All right, is there anybody else before we move on to the next school?
I'm not seeing anyone. So Heather, the thought process is that we have Megan here, and she's going to talk about the food service budget. And at
Okay.
8:30, the thought process would be that we would finish up with Megan, and then on Wednesday we would then do Bartlett, Maple, Mountain View, and the high school, and then that would take us there because the school board still has business that they have to.
Right, we have to
conduct.
finish.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
that works for me.
So what
We
I'll
can
do is,
do that.
Megan, I'll bring up your presentation right now.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Megan.
Hi, folks. And as folks have alluded, apparently we have some new budget committee members. So for those new budget committee members, we are considered an enterprise fund. And in a very normal year without a pandemic, we bring in or we generate enough revenue to cover all of our expenses. COVID has hit, and it's making that very difficult and much more challenging. But you are very lucky in Goffstown. You have a wonderful group of folks who work in your kitchens, your culinary creators who have been really on point starting this year with dealing with, how do we think this problem, how do we figure this out, how do we make it work for the kids and for the staff. So I just want to thank those folks who I get to work with every day. They have done an outstanding job to start the year.
Megan, if I could, some of the budget committee members don't know this. School board members and principals obviously do, but we were, due to COVID, we were in an unfortunate situation that we had to lay off or furlough people. So if you could just, again, highlight, if you could just talk about that just for a little bit. It's just not like there hasn't been any consequences of this. We had to make some tough decisions.
Yeah. We actually laid off 8 employees in Goffstown. We also had 4 positions that we did not fill. So it's a total of affected 12 positions in terms of not filling and laying off. It also affected probably about another 6 or 8 positions in terms of reduced hours, because we, with the schools being in such a reduced capacity, basically 50% of the kids in on one day, the next 50% in, and it's truly not 50% when you bring in the remote kids. So our numbers are, it's not quite rock bottom, but it's close in a couple of the buildings. But we're feeding kids in a very different way. We're feeding in the classrooms, which makes menuing items very challenging. Kids are used to, and parents are used to just lunch just happens. We don't have to think about it. And now we're asking folks to think about and pre-order and help us to do that. And folks are coming around, but it's definitely had a very challenging effect on our staff. And I will say those folks who are here understand the reality of our situation. We look at our meal counts, and probably by the end of October, we'll assess again and see where we are. And we're moving work around to where there is capacity and where there isn't capacity to maximize our workforce and our labor hours. So, any other, Scott, did I miss anything on that?
No, I just wanted folks on the budget committee to know that it's been a very challenging year last year. It'll be a very challenging year this year. The difference between this year and last year is that we made the tough decision to lay off personnel and then, hopefully call them back as we go through the year. But if not, because we are an enterprise fund, like you mentioned, it's supposed to be break even. So our revenues are supposed to match our expenditures. We are allowed to keep a fund balance, as you can see on the slide, a little over 100,000. But unfortunately, last year, the school board had to subsidize the food service account because of COVID. And it might happen again this year, but we're trying to minimize that as best we can. And that, unfortunately, is why we've had to lay folks off.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm sorry
No,
I
you're fine.
I thought it was a good thing to at least share, because some of the folks might not know that.
Yep. Great. So when we came to budgeting, again, we don't really know what the future is going to give us in terms of, will we be back to full board and everybody's in and we're going to get to see kids again in the cafeterias, or are we going to be in some sort of modified school and feeding environment? So we just rolled all our numbers. After talking with Scott, it seemed like the wisest thing to do, a fairly conservative approach. And just put in the contractual changes. We staffed it at what we were pre-COVID. Again, just trying to, with our fingers and toes crossed, that next fall we'll be back to using our cafeterias as great places for kids to come and kind of let their hair down and have some good food. So our net revenues last year were $1,052,512, which includes a general fund transfer of $205,122,000. Prior year, we were at roughly 1.1 and change in terms of net revenues. We did have an overall decrease in revenues, which was about $131,000. And that's without the transfer. We did operate and provide meals from April through, actually since April, we've just kept feeding. And so we were able to make up some of our lost revenue through offering meals for free for parents and to come and pick up. Last year, because it was such a short year, we actually didn't have any capital costs. Usually we do have some, but last year was not the year to do that. And our fund balance that we're fortunate enough to end up with was approximately $100,000. Scott, if you'll go to the next slide. So our current budget is $1,144,640. Our fiscal year 21 is $1,230,769, and we're looking for a fiscal year 22 of $1,248,991. Approximately a 1.5% increase. It's all in labor costs. There are no additional supplies or equipment at this time. And you can see there's our labor costs for a budget of last year of $622,000, fiscal year 21, which is what we're in now, for $650,000, and fiscal year 22, $670,000. And again, those.
One of the things that folks should know is that we have a lot of part-time people. We have folks that are not benefit eligible. Retirement doesn't factor into a lot of food service. So in this particular case, Megan's operation is very much unlike our schools in terms of retirement and benefits. So it's very, very different.
Yep. And our food costs, you'll see, our numbers are right there. We had approximately from fiscal year 20 to 21, we went up about approximately $35,000, and we're looking at, again, we're just rolling that number into next year. We actually, because of our buying group, and for those new members on the budget committee, we are part of the New Hampshire School Buying Group, which is represents over half the students in the state. Our bid is approximately, I think it's about $10 million a year in business. We have been unbelievably fortunate through this. We have not seen our prices skyrocket, and that is because we're part of this group. And I would anticipate that the vendor that we're working with, they've been phenomenal in terms of getting product that school districts needed. That was, because a lot of us had to pivot and change our product mix. And they've been phenomenal and finding great products at outstanding prices. There is a buying group in Massachusetts with another vendor who they've been seeing cases, double in costs, and we have not seen that at all. So we've been very fortunate.
So Megan, I was going to throw you a curveball and put a slide that you were, working with
I'm ready.
Trader Joe's, but that's not true, right?
No, it's
Okay.
not. Okay. And our other costs, these are our supplies, our postage, any mileage, any fees that we pay for our software, and those types of things. So that's what rolls into here, and you'll see that's pretty much, we actually went down because we took this year's 104,000 included a new laptop for myself, and next year we won't need that. So we took that out of the budget. And next slide, Scott. And this is my moment just to kind of brag about how much we have changed. And you'll probably hear this from the other principals. I've been doing this job for over 25 years. Since March, I feel like a brand new director in a brand new first year. And so does my staff. And you'll hear that, I think, from the principals as well. This is just some pictures of some of the packaging. The sandwich with the grapes was from the summer feeding. This is our antipasta platter that we did in schools just about a week ago. And then this is how we package our salad meals to be delivered to the classrooms. We are, as we talked about earlier, currently we're under what's called the seamless summer waiver. So everybody gets free food. For parents who are listening, it really is free and you're not taking it away from anyone else. I appreciate those concerns, but the money is there for everyone. The staff has done an amazing job figuring out meal packaging and curbside delivery and classroom delivery, sanitation, how to make it all work. I can't say enough about their willingness to try and figure it out. Just like your teachers and your custodial staff and your administrators have been doing, we've all been trying to just figure it out as we go. And we actually started to serve our high school students today in the cafeteria. They came down to pick up. And it was so exciting to see students, because that's one of the things that most of our staff are not going to see this year, our students, because the cafeterias aren't getting used. And it's kind of an eerie place when students aren't there at lunchtime and it's only a few folks, but we're excited to start, seeing them at the high school a little bit more. So those are just some exciting things that we're trying to do this year. And we're looking forward to continuing to improve that. And we're looking forward to folks coming back into the program. I know folks at home are probably, everybody's got to settle in, and we appreciate that. And we hope to see them and their orders soon. So any questions from folks at this point?
Thank you, Megan. I'm just scrolling through. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Megan? I don't see anyone. Okay, so I think that's going to conclude at least the budget presentations from our schools, because the Goffstown School Board still needs to finish up. Unless anybody has anything else to say, the budget committee members and administrators, except Justin Huff, can leave. We have another meeting on this Wednesday, October 7th at 6 o'clock, and that is through a Zoom, and we will finish up Bartlett, Maple, Mountain View, and the high school. So Brian, Scott, do you have anything else to add? Thank you, everybody, for coming.
I agreed, Heather. I'd like to thank the budget committee. And if there are any questions or any follow-up that's needed, Cole can get in touch with either myself or Mr. Gross, and we're happy to provide any additional information to budget committee members. And we look forward to coming to your meetings in the future and deliberating further on the budget. So thanks for being with us tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Wednesday.
Right, sign in around 5:45, please. All right.
Great.
So
Thank you.
Good
thank you,
night.
Very
Paul.
much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good
So
night.
all administrators except Mr. Huft, please
Yeah.
feel free to have a pleasant evening. I hear it's still nice out and it's not that late. So thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we left off with athletics, but I was wondering if because I know that's going to take some time to talk about, could we go back to the Uncanunic Mountaineers annual permission? Is that something we can do quickly and then move on and let Justin talk? And I know Dan had some questions. So with the Uncanunic Mountaineers annual permission, they ask every year. Last time Jared had some questions. You had in your packets or in your email, Denise did send the liability of insurance, which should cover everything. Brian, Scott, did you want to talk a little bit more on that to make sure we were covered?
As we left this topic off last time, there was a question whether the trail administrator of the Uncanunic Mountaineers, who had requested permission to bring his four-wheeler, an ATV, onto the property to do some field and some trail maintenance. We did in fact get a copy of his coverage for that vehicle. So I think we've satisfied the questions that that board members had. So at this point, it would be our recommendation to approve the annual access to part of the property at Goffstown High School for the Uncanunic Mountaineers for the Snowmobile Trail Association.
So moved.
All right, Ellen is making a motion. Do I have a second?
Tim will second that.
Tim will second. Okay, before I take a roll call, is everybody good with this? Jared, I know you had questions last time.
Yeah, the policy that was provided, was there a dollar amount actually associated with that policy? I did not see one on the documentation, because I thought the policy was that it had to be within $1 million.
It's $1 million up in the
It
upper
is?
right-hand corner there. Yeah, right there.
Yep, it does say.
Okay.
million.
Thank you very much.
All right, awesome. So I have a motion, I have a second, so I'm going to do a roll call. Dan,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Retta. I know she was there. She may have stepped off.
Don't see
Yeah.
her picture.
I don't
see
see
her.
her.
Okay. So Retta's not here, Denise, and Heather, yes. So that is 8 yeses. All right, so that passes. So now we're going to get back to the athletics update. So
Okay, formally, I'd like to make a motion that we take the athletic discussion off the table.
Okay, Dan. And do I have a second?
Second.
By Ellen. Okay, we'll do roll call. Dan,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Zana,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Retta. Yep.
She's a yes. She just
Yeah,
mouthed
she
it.
said yes. And Heather, yes. Okay, so Dan, I know you had questions. Justin, did you want to talk more freely about everything, a little more clear, so you're not under the gun anymore?
Feeling a little less under the gun, but happy to
Yes.
answer questions.
Okay, Dan, I know you had questions for Justin.
I'm trying to remember what the motion was. This motion was just to do
I can read it.
planning and commit to the current fall sports that we have already approved to continue doing, not the winter ones that were indoors. We're still going to be doing the outdoor stuff. It's not going to change. What I've been hearing about COVID and the cold weather coming, and it's starting to hit us bigger. We're talking about indoor sports, but that's none of this. This is still a continuation of what we're currently doing. Does that make
Yes.
all the sense in the world?
It does to me, Dan, yes.
Okay, thank you. That alleviates some of my concerns on hearing about the increase of cases that are coming on.
And really,
Not in Goffstown, but worldwide, so to speak.
well, and we're going to have some pretty, I think, difficult decisions about winter athletics. So I appreciate that, you know, Justin, we're here talking about the fall, but when we get into conversations about winter, we are not making any recommendations for winter sports. And just to be clear, winter sports that we have, and Justin, just refresh my memory because I'm doing this from memory. We have wrestling. Obviously, wrestling without any kind of a testing regimen is going to be incredibly challenging to consider how to do it safely. Boys and girls basketball, again, very concerning. Guidance from CDC has changed to 10 minutes of cumulative close contact. So basketball has me concerned. Swimming has me concerned. Cheer, we did cheer this fall, and cheer was outside, and that worked out okay for us, but winter cheer would be moving indoors. We have winter track, and at this point, our winter track has been held at some of our institutions of higher ed. I think UNH and SNU might be some of the places that we've used, or certainly UNH anyhow. Skiing, I think, is probably one of the easier ones to do, and ice hockey. So I do think we're going to have some hard conversations to have about these winter sports. But to Dan's point, what I had recommended for a motion was to grant the athletic director authority to proceed with post-season planning for scheduling purposes for the high school and the middle school, with the understanding that the superintendent still has the authority to suspend play for any and all teams if necessary.
All right, Brian, do you want Denise to read what was that the motion that was said before, or do you want Denise to read what was said before, what the motion was?
I'd like to hear the motion as it was recorded.
Okay, Denise, are you able to, where'd she go? There she is. Denise, are you able to do that?
She's muted.
Yeah, I think she might be looking for it.
While she's looking for it, I just want to make sure in that some of this play will be going out of our region, possibly, if sports continue to go through the season or through the tournaments. We will be able to, even though we are in and we're scheduled, if a school is having difficulties, we will be able to cancel.
You can always move from a yes to a no for sure. And that would be a good example of something that, like right now, we're on a week by week basis. And if it's a postseason, and we're not going to be the only school in that boat, that it's going to be on a game by game basis. And if we have a game scheduled with a school district that has, they're in a hot zone, or there's something there that we're uncomfortable with, that's something that my assumption would be that Brian and I would be talking at that point, and we would do what's in the best interest of our students.
Agreed.
All right, Denise, are you available to read the motion?
He does have it.
I do have it.
All right, could you read that to us?
Sure. It's Ellen Vermakowitz motion to grant the athletic director to proceed with postseason planning for scheduling services for DHS and MVMS with the understanding that the superintendent has the authority to suspend play. Dan Cludia seconded.
Okay. Thank you, Denise.
You're welcome.
Dan, are you good with that?
I'm good with that, and Ellen has her hand up.
Does she? I didn't. Okay, sorry, Ellen. I wasn't on that screen. Go ahead, Ellen.
Well, and this word is in the motion, but someone asked a question earlier on in this before we recessed, the word planning. It sounds like we're approving the planning, but I believe we want to approve the doing as well. And someone asked for a depth of which way what we were approving. Approving planning is not the same as approving doing it.
Right.
I don't think. So are we approving just the planning and not the doing? Or go ahead and do it if it's deemed follows the protocols and the requirements that Justin had set up prior?
Justin, you want to answer that?
I think it would be kind of the group's pleasure as far as long as I'm explaining myself properly about what I would be looking for, which is just that tomorrow, for example, there's a survey due to the NHIAA. Are you going to participate in a postseason football tournament, open tournament? What I'm asking the board is, are we able to answer yes to that question? In that, as of right now, yes, we would like to participate, knowing that in the next 2 weeks, obviously things could change. So I guess I should be clear about that. Yes, the intention would be we're continuing with the sports that we're playing. This is in the previous school board meeting. I did lay out 5 phases. Phases 3 and 4 were approved, and that was preseason practicing, regular season playing. Phase 5 was postseason play, which could involve playing teams outside the region. So I guess that is what I'm here asking permission for.
So in light of that, actually, Dan, I think it was you who asked the question for
was.
clarity.
It was.
I would like to, for clarity in the motion, to include plan and participate in the postseason, as long as it meets our requirements and approval of our superintendent.
I will, I had a second. I approve of the wording for my second.
That amendment.
And given that the superintendent, see, right now, the planning and the participation is the school board, but because of the 2-week time frame, the one who would be canceling this, so to speak, would be the superintendent, not the school board, because we wouldn't have that opportunity until, well, perhaps next Wednesday or 2 weeks from now.
So you're okay with it amended that way, Dan?
I am, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Denise, did you get that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. So is everybody good with the motion and second? Any other questions, comments for Justin before I do a roll call?
So in reality, this is moving to phase 5 for athletics, as was laid out by Justin earlier.
For fall only.
Right,
Fall, correct.
right, fall only. Okay. Anybody else?
Just as a statement, Heather, to be
Yes.
consistent with prior school board meetings, especially around academics and our prior vote, unfortunately, I will be voting no on this.
Okay. All right, well, I'll do roll call if we're ready. Dan,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Tim,
No.
Susanna,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Jared,
No.
Ginny,
Yes.
Retta,
Yes.
and Heather, yes. So that's 7 yeses and 2 nos. Motion passed, Justin. Thank you for staying on, and just keep us in the loop, either to Brian or to Scott, as how things go in the future with tournaments and stuff.
Will do.
All right, thank you. So if we're good, Justin can go now.
Please have a good evening, Justin. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Justin. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, moving on to new business. We have some.
Yeah, Ellen had her hand up again.
Oh, she did?
Did you? I saw
Yeah.
you waving.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Ellen.
you did. Just real quick, someone had mentioned before, and I agree, I think it was Ginny. When there's going to be a presentation, if we could get it beforehand, either in the online or in a hard copy or something, so we can look it over. And I do study the stuff that I'm given, and I know I could understand it better if it's presented after I've had a chance to look at it. So whenever possible, can we get that kind of thing beforehand?
Sure, definitely.
Thank
Ellen.
you.
You're welcome. All right, so we're moving on to new business. We need some authorizations again. Did I see a hand again? No, okay. We need a board motion is needed to grant continued authorization to the superintendent under the superintendent's emergency operations plan for COVID-19 as a temporary regulation to policy EBCF, pandemic epidemic emergencies, and to grant the superintendent or his designee authorization to respond at his or her discretion to changing public health circumstances, and to allow the superintendent the ability to modify or adapt school policy as needed until the next successful school board meeting.
So moved.
By Ellen, do I have a second?
Dan will second that.
Dan will second. Thank you, Dan. Do roll call. Dan,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Retta,
Yes.
and Heather, yes. So we're unanimous. The next
Be-
one
be-
is,
Before you read it, Heather, can
Yes.
I offer a suggestion?
sure.
Is there a reason? I'd like to put a small reason in there to grant the administrator to just to make payments out of sequence, just not out of willy whammy, but there's a reason why we do this, I think, Scott, isn't it? Because there's a certain dollar amount and you're on mute. And also the ability to not lose discounts, make them on time, that kind of thing. You're still on mute. We can't hear you.
Why isn't it? Okay, is it working now? All right.
There we go, Scott. Go.
Yeah, that's precisely it. I do that for a variety of reasons. One, I want to make sure that we pay our bills on time. So if we get an invoice that's late, or for some reason it gets misrouted, I don't want to have to pay a late fee. So those are the reasons for that. And I always report back at the next meeting. Everything is on the manifest. Everything is in the check register. So there's nothing it's all transparent and all, but we just want to make sure that people get paid on time. And sometimes things are wacky and you don't get an invoice and most, like recently, the US Post Office, as everybody's been hearing, it's true. I mean, we're not getting things that we would ordinarily get in 2 and 3 days. It's taking like 4 and 5 days. So it is important that I have that ability to do it.
Dan,
Is there a couple of words that you can put in there so that we have reasons rather than, so you get a water bill and you just say, you know what, it's more convenient to do it now instead of in 2 weeks. But I just went through the Plosnick, the auditor's report and says, do you approve every bill before? And I had to write, well, yes, but through an amendment. So I'm just trying to be a little more constricted as to why we would pay them out of sequence. And I don't know if there's some words that you can put in that says, in order not to pay them on time or something like that.
Yeah, how about this? Motion to grant the business administrator authorization to make payments out of sequence to ensure timely payments. Did that work?
That works.
To vendors and employees, and to notify the board of such payments at the next scheduled school board meeting.
I will offer that as a motion, as you said.
Thank you, Dan.
Second.
Yeah, I wrote it down. Do I have a second?
Yep.
Ellen is seconding. Okay, I'll do a roll call. Dan,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Retta,
Yes.
and Heather, yes. So we're unanimous in passing that. We're now on to school staffing. Brian?
Mr. Gross is pulling up the sheet. We have one notification. Congratulations to Mr. Whiteman, who is moving from bachelor's 30 to master's degree. So we will send him a congratulatory letter to that effect. And then a few approvals. We have a student support specialist nomination. This is a tutor who historically has been located at the alt ed program. This is a new person in that role. Connor Hager. We have a resignation of our language model facilitator, Molly Schellenberger. This next one does not need your approval. This is just a notification for coaches not returning. Jeff Magis, who was the boys B soccer coach last year. This one would be for approval, as would be the entire next section. Scott, if you go down a little bit. Thank you. So Matt Marquis as a new boys B soccer coach, I'd like to thank Matt for stepping up. This was a team we did not have a coach for. So we're often lucky that we get a lot of great parents who are willing to help us out. So thank you to Matt. And then you can see down below for some of our co-curriculars for strings, jazz band, chorus, drama, yearbook, and student government. The remaining positions would be those nominations.
All right,
Move
thank
to
you.
approve nominations.
Okay, I have a motion by Ellen. Do I have a second?
And just for giggles, it did not include the
Resignation,
resignation.
right?
No, just nominations.
Nominations.
I think Ginny has something.
Yeah,
that she-
Ginny's got her hand up.
Okay, can I have a second first before I get on Ginny? Where's Ginny?
I
There
was
you are.
seconding the
Oh, you
motion.
were second. Thank you, Ginny. All right, so we have a motion by Ellen. We have a second by Ginny accepting the nominations. I'll do a roll call. Dan,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Retta,
Yes.
and Heather is yes. So that passed. Now we need a motion to accept the resignation
So moved.
by Ellen. I have a second.
Ginny was waving her hand.
Are you waving your hand in a second again?
Yeah, I will second that. I also have a question that can wait till after this.
Is it about the resignation?
No.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second for the resignation. Dan,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Janelle.
Yes.
I can hardly hear you, Janelle.
Yes.
Thank you. Jared,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Retta,
Yes.
and Heather, yes. So we're unanimous. So go ahead, Ginny. What was your question?
I was just wondering if the co-curricular nominations that we've made, are those the co-curricular activities that are going on right now? Or are these just ones that we've okayed? Are they actually in force?
I believe they are, yes. Or they're slated to be moving forward, yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ginny. All right. So is there any other business that may legally come before the meeting?
Administration has nothing.
Nothing. Okay. I don't see anybody's hand up. All right. We don't
Not
have
even
non.
Ellen.
What was that?
Not even Ellen.
Not even Ellen tonight. And we don't have non-public.
Nope.
So we can take a motion
Adjourn?
to adjourn.
So made.
And do I have a second?
Dan will
Seconded.
second that.
Dan will second, and I'll do a roll call. Dan,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Retta,
Yes.
and Heather. Yes. So we are adjourned. So thank you, everybody. And we will see you
Thank you.
Wednesday at 5:45 for a 6 o'clock Zoom meeting.
Heather,
Okay.